Hey gang, I originally wrote this back in 2023, so things may seem a little dated, but until now I've never had the motivation to read an hour-long video. However, after seeing the performance of my Road 96 video, I said hey, why not, so here we are. Without further ado, let's begin. I'm a bit of a gamer with a hard R. I think my first exposure to video games was watching my older brother play the first Assassin's Creed and Elder Scrolls 4, Oblivion. 18 years later, and one franchise has released 20 plus titles since then, and the other 3-ish, almost 4, in September 2023. Not including MMOs, hopefully. Hey, side note here, from July 2024, Starfield was ass. Sorry, Gideon from the past. I distinctly remember being a little traumatized from scenes in Assassin's Creed, but here I am playing Odyssey in my spare time, currently enjoying the most out of it. I will say they've turned down the violence factor in more recent games, or maybe I'm just desensitized to violence as the media says. Throughout the years of becoming a gamer, hard R, I've played a good handful of titles to completion. It's very rare I'll play a game without completing the main story at the very least, even if that takes years. One game among this sea of titles I found particularly enjoyable is a little gem by the name of Inscription, with a Y. I was gifted this game by one of my brothers for my birthday, as I so often am, and if you can't tell, I may be the weaker of the gamers in my family. Even my dad is pretty good at Flight Simulator and my mom Tetris. Personally, I can't tell if it was playing this title in what was practically a cabin in the Colorado winter that made me enjoy it so much, or if it's just that good of a game. Side note, it is. Nonetheless, it's one of my favorites to date. Even outside the amazing setting I was in, you can play it anywhere, and the enticing story will suck you in almost immediately. Inscription, with a Y, is a board game, roguelike, deck builder, role-playing, first-person horror, cabin-in-the-woods simulator. Basically, if you like strategy games and puzzles, then this game may be your next obsession. Created by Daniel Mullins, a Canadian indie video game dev, and released in 2021, this title is a tie-in with a trilogy created by Mullins. We'll only be talking about Inscription, maybe I'll make a video about the other two games, The Hex and Pony Island, in the future, but they act more as two prequels rather than Inscription being a sequel of anything in particular. Meaning, we don't need to have played the other two to understand Inscription to a satisfying point. Full honesty, I haven't played these games to completion yet, only partially, but I'm downloading them again literally as I narrate this. Having just played the other two won't directly give you some grander insight. You really have to be in the know to understand how all three engage with one another. There's another creator who ties them all together pretty well with his own video. In no way are we associated, but their video helped me, so I'll show it on screen and link it below. Back to Inscription. In short, it's a card game, so anyone can get into this one, which is why I picked up this number to make an extensive video on to begin with. The replay value is immensely high, and once you're done with the main story, there's this relatively new update called Casey's Mod that adds new challenges and some extended lore to the first act, but we'll get into that at the end of the video. More importantly, I'm going to make references to something called the old_data, or old data. Just go with it, as it all goes together in the end. Now, if you don't want spoilers, stop watching. And I'm talking like super deep spoilers even to current players who think they know everything. For those of us who can still enjoy things we know are going to happen, similar to how you enjoy life, even though you know you'll die one day, then welcome. Sit back, relax, my name's Gideon, and let's begin. Launching the game, we're greeted with a play button. Thinking it's for starting the game, I click it. However, it's for a media player. A voice can be heard, and then it cuts. When we wake up, things are dark. Slowly but surely, two eyes appear from the abyss. They spiral occasionally when the voice speaks. This is our captor for the next several hours. He never gives us his name. Regardless, he does want something. This unnamed psychopath wants us to play a game, a board and card game combo to be exact. The rules are simple, #not really. But let's summarize what you need to know. I am well aware listening to someone explain rules to a card game is a certain circle of hell, so if you want to skip over this jazz, just go to the timecode on the screen. You won't be losing out on anything, but it does give context. Squirrels are token cards with 0 attack and 0 health. They can be used to summon stronger cards that do have better stats than the squirrel's initial stats of 0. This is similar to special summoning if you're familiar with Yu-Gi-Oh! Some cards in your starting deck, like the Wolf card, take 2 sacrifices but are worth it because of their 3 attack and 2 health stat. There are even cards that take up to 4 sacrifices. The sacrifices do not have to strictly be squirrels, but can also be non-squirrel cards. You can even sacrifice the 2-cost Wolf card, but it only carries a sacrifice weight of 1. The player either draws from a squirrel pile or from a signature deck pile at the beginning of each round. When the player round ends, the cards will attack and act on any sigils they may have attached. To win a match or encounter, you'll soon find that you need to score 5 points of direct attack damage. The points are measured using a scale and golden teeth. You'll know you won when the scale is turned in your opponent's direction. Essentially, when your score outweighs your captor's, you win. The captor can score direct damage on you as well. The damage caused can undo all your work in a single round or even kill you. For example, if you do 4 damage and the captor does 5, you've really actually only taken a single point of damage when everything is said and done. There are 4 spaces on your side of the field and 8 spaces on the captor's. The front 4 rows of the captors show the actively fielded cards, the back 4 show what will become active in the next round, or if the front row card is killed. Overkill damage on a creature will not affect a direct attack score, but can hurt the cards in the back 4 if the damage exceeds the front 4's health stat. This means you can use squirrels as a decoy to prevent direct damage to yourself, and if you kill a creature that possesses 2 health with 4 damage, the creature in the secondary row will be inflicted the remaining 2 damage. But if there's not a creature in the secondary row, the damages become null. The game rewards these overkills of direct damage by giving you the extra golden teeth as a trading currency that the player holds onto in a stone bowl. These teeth can be used in other encounters throughout the game, but resets at the end of every run. After winning your first match, you may proceed with the lane-out board game, yourself being represented on the table as a character piece. You, the player, choose different paths and therefore the type of encounters you'll be facing. Making your way through the map, you'll gain insight on several possible encounters, one being a chance to sacrifice a card to bestow the sigil's ability of said card onto another. But in this process, you permanently remove this instance of said sacrificed card from your deck. Another encounter will have you gambling with the cards in your deck for possible power-ups. This can be done at a campfire surrounded by hungry people that will raise your card stats for each turn the card is left in the fire, but also has the possibility of destroying that same card. You do get to keep the bones from the killed creature, which will make sense later in this video. There's combat encounters where the captor uses totems. Totems are very powerful game mechanics that add a status effect to every card of a single creature type. These totems are portrayed on the table by wood statues. Creature types can be determined by looking at the insignia of the card in the left-hand corner. The creature types are avian, insects, canine, reptile, hooved, and squirrel. To pair with these creature types, a player can choose from over 30 different sigils throughout the game. The player can acquire their own totem by choosing Woodcarver encounters, selecting the 2 aspects of the head and the body sigil effect. This will grant the player their own complete totem. Eventually, there will be pretty crazy encounters where you can duplicate cards with even better stats or fuse them together through sick medical procedures. And finally with that, you've got a pretty good gist of the rules. This is where the people who skipped will tune in. To you, I say hello, time traveler, this is the future. During your playthrough of the game, you'll be assisted by a helpful and clearly frightened cast of talking cards. The first the player encounters is a card by the name of the Stoat. The Stoat will automatically be in the player's starting deck and is not happy at all about it. The Stoat is a character card having a personality, and more importantly, unlike most cards in the game, the Stoat talks. The Stoat will make insightful quips on how the player can do better, only then to be threatened by the captor in return for its commentary. The Stoat will also make commentary when in stat encounters, like "this is sketchy" and "please don't." The Stoat will also show the player gratitude if he's not sacrificed in any of the combat encounters during a run. On top of the 2 stat altering options, there are encounters where you get items that can be used in combat. The player automatically has 3 open item spaces. When the spaces are all full, the player will receive a pack rat card instead from these item encounters. The pack rat has a sigil ability where if played onto the field, the player will receive an item if a space is open. These items include bottles that can break open, which contain free-to-use squirrels, and a goat card that, if summoned for 1 sacrifice, will give you a sacrifice weight of 3 in return. There are also scissors to remove a captor's card of your choice. There's a fan that lets you apply a flying status effect to all of your cards on the field for a single round. The flying sigil ability allows for direct attacks unless having a specific counter sigil that prevents such flying attacks. Our starting deck frog card has this status effect. New items can be unlocked as you continue throughout the game, like an hourglass that skips a captor's turn, a bottle with a frozen possum that once defeated releases a possum on the field. There are a few more I'm not going to name, but that's the fun of playing it yourself. At some point after being dropped into this bizarre circumstance, you'll lose at least once. It just happens, no shame in it. This is when the captor will request that you get up from the table and go grab a dual-headed candlestick. This is our player character's first opportunity to explore the cabin we're being held prisoner in. There's a few notable features to the cabin: a rulebook on how to play, a safe, a cuckoo clock, a painting, a couple of statues, various puzzles, and a few other odd curios. Once we return to the game table, the captor explains we essentially have 2 lives and we just use the first. This is represented by the 2 candles that are lit at the start of each run. Having a life bar, we progress further into the run. If you're a quick learner, there's a chance you may get pretty far. In the first run, we're given the opportunity to take out the first of the 4 bosses, the Prospector. Bosses are different from regular combat encounters as they take 2 subsequent rounds in order to complete, meaning you have to defeat a boss not only once, but twice. These bosses are just our captor with a series of new masks on. The gimmick to this boss fight is a Prospector Gold Rush theme. You'll likely be close to running out of cards near Phase 2. At the end of Phase 1, the Prospector will strike our cards with his pickaxe, turning them into gold with the stats of 2 health and 0 attack. In order to avoid this, our player needs to take out a mule card that the Prospector has placed on the board in the first round. Doing so will fill the player's hands with cards the mule was hauling in a pack. These cards aren't needed to beat the Prospector, but they do help. The mule card cannot be destroyed by the scissors, an item that can normally cut cards, as it's stated to be too thick. This boss uses primarily canine-themed cards, coyote and bloodhound cards, but isn't afraid to whip out a bunch of wolf cards if the occasion calls for it. The bloodhound card has a tracking sigil ability. This causes the card to move to the counter spot of your last place card, and that being if the space is open, and will also block attacks. The mule has a shuffle trait, meaning that the card will shift left to right after each turn depending on which is open. After beating the Prospector in the final round, the captor will offer us a rare and new card from a box, giving us 3 options to choose from. To close out this interaction, the captor will refill your 2 lives once you've cleared a stage. With that, we proceed to the second of the 4 areas required to beat the first act of the game. This next area has a swampy ocean feel and is called the Wetlands. In this second area, we encounter the fur trader and the trapper. This is the same character mask, just flipped upside down, depending on the role. The gold teeth we've been collecting with overkills can be sold to the hunter for pelts, and the pelts can be traded for rare and strong cards to the fur trader, a pretty solid 3-part economy. Typically, most first-timers will be killed before reaching the second boss. If, however, you are skilled in the way of deck builders, you can in fact get to boss number 2. If you make it to a boss without losing one of your candles, then you will be rewarded with a smoke card. These smoke cards are free sacrifices and also provide bone tokens. More on these bone tokens in a minute. More importantly, the smoke card is sourced from one of the 2 candles you've managed to keep till the boss fight, reducing your lives down to 1. If you lose even a single round, you'll receive an endgame. The second boss goes by the name of the Angler and was arguably the most frustrating boss to me in the first act. He is our captor once again, but in a new mask. The whole deal with this boss battle is that in Phase 1 of this fight, the Angler will try to steal whichever card is most recently placed down by the player with a giant hook. You can get around this by placing squirrels down as red herring. This maneuver of having him steal squirrels not only leaves him open to attack, but also does not allow the captor to attack with the statless squirrel either. This creates a buffer in so many words, not against just direct damage, but all damage. Upon completing Phase 1 of this boss encounter, something unique to the first run of the game will occur. The captor will break character as the Angler and say, "Too far, too soon." After this ominous message, the Angler will proceed to fill every space on the board with beefed up grizzlies. This is also known as the grizzly or bear wall. On normal runs in Phase 2, the Angler places buckets of chum down for each counter space occupied by a player card. When attacked, these buckets spawn a Great White. Great Whites use a dive sigil, meaning they cannot be directly attacked, but do leave an open space for a direct attack to the captor. The buckets can be gotten around by using flying cards. This is because the buckets lack the anti-air attack sigil, meaning we can just essentially leave them as just buckets. Unfortunately for us though, we're up against the grizzly wall in the first run. These grizzly cards do have that sigil trait that allows them to block flying attacks. You delay the inevitable by placing squirrels down as buffers to immediate damage, but you're destined to lose. I'm not going to act like the others weren't better than me and able to beat the grizzly wall, but the ending is always the same. You can even go so far as to clear the first act of the game on the first run, however the end result is the same. Beating the game on the first run will prompt the Oops event. During the Oops event, the camera the protagonist of Inscription is recording on is knocked over, confirming that this is being recorded and we're playing a game within a game, as the surrounding space, when the camera is knocked over, appears to be a residential home. Even more so, the man behind the camera states oops as doing this, and also states he thinks he's beat the captor. If you take the loss, the last candle goes out and the captor loses the angler or trapper mask and begins reaching across the table. Oh no. If you won somehow, I'm impressed, and you'll get a standard successful run ending plus the oops event. With this, the captor presents you a big pile of meat. The oops event will occur, and then the captor will begin reaching across the table once again. When we wake up, we're in a different room, but all we can see is a door with our captor in the frame. He makes it clear we aren't dead, yet. The captor says we had a good run, and that we're going to make a memento to honor this attempt. He asks you several questions about your cards, which sacrifices you preferred, stats, and sigil traits. Finally, the captor asks you your name, or the name of this custom card you've been making. Once it's given, he says now time to top it off with a photo. The captor begins looking for his camera, but can't find it. We, the players, see it on the floor within reach and go for it. Pointing it at the captor, we pull the button, only to be met with an empty click. The captor is amused and tells us he would never leave film in something so important. The captor snatches the camera from us, inserting the film and pointing the lens. A bright flash from the camera engulfs our field of view, then it all goes black. This event will occur whether you successfully defeated the captor or not. Darkness fades and a familiar sight comes into view, the spiraling eyes. We wake up and we're back at the table once again. However, the captor has forgotten your character piece for the board game this time, and asks if you'll get up from the table and retrieve one. Once getting up, we can explore the cabin freely for a second time. Taking a closer glance at the rulebook, we discover that the combination for the safe is scrawled in some sort of red ink on one of the pages. Making our way back to the safe we noticed earlier, we multitask and grab our character piece while cracking this bad boy open. Upon entering the safe combination correctly, the door will swing open only for us to be greeted by another character card, the stink bug. "You freed me," she says with a smile. Unlike the stoat, the stink bug is optimistic. The two balance each other out, with the stink bug's positive outlook on life being nicely complemented by the stoat's pessimistic approach to everything. For comparison, the stink bug says she understands when we sacrifice her, unlike the stoat who says bad play for even being put on the board. There's also a key in the safe, but we have our hands full at the moment with the character piece, so we'll have to come back in a moment. Once we make our way back to the table, the captor tells us about a new concept he didn't mention last time. Conveniently so, because I was kicking his ass before the grizzly wall. Regardless, from this point on, there will be cards the character can place by using bone tokens instead of sacrificing other cards. These bone tokens are gathered every time a card is discarded by the player or killed by the captor. Sacrifices will build up bone tokens which can then be spent on cards like the coyote or vulture, both of which using several bone tokens. The stinkbug character we just obtained can also use bone tokens as her way of being summoned, taking a total of 2 of these bone tokens overall to be placed on the board. After this whole monologue thing with the bone tokens, the captor says feel free to get up anytime as we're allowed to do so. I got up and went back to the safe to see if I couldn't find what that key we saw earlier was meant to unlock. Looking directly to my left reveals a cabinet armoire thing that has a keyhole. Making my way over to the keyhole, it's a perfect fit. The previously locked flap swings down only to reveal 2 intricate sliding panel puzzles. Looking at this complex array, I say maybe another time, internally, and promptly took my seat at the table for another round of ass kicking. The stoat is less amused by the interaction than the stink bug, but nonetheless, the stink bug makes reference to another talking card who is the unofficial leader of the trio. More importantly, this aforementioned card has a plan to escape the captor's grasp, so as the player, we need to find it. Keeping all I've learned in the back of my mind, we begin making our way through a standard run until unfortunately I get taken down a candle, or rather a life, by a particularly difficult encounter. Needing a little break from this humbling experience, I get up from the table and take a crack at those sliding puzzles we unlocked earlier. Basically, the puzzles are a mechanical combat encounter and you have to move the sliding pieces in a way that amounts to doing a perfect 5 damage direct hit to what would be the captor's side. Now keep in mind, this isn't my favorite part of the game, but some of the rewards for opening the drawers will be worth it. The first puzzle gives us the skink card. Bland overall, but the card will now appear as a regular in this run and future runs. The skink's unique sigil ability allows it to deploy a decoy when the card would normally be damaged. The tail, if not killed by the captor in the attack phase, can be used as a sacrifice. Just like every other sigil, the severed tail sigil can be transferred to another card during a transfer encounter. Solving the second puzzle, we can obtain an ant and mother ant card. These can be good, but still, meh. Same with the skink card, these will now appear in runs as regulars. The ants are really good in that thing called Casey's mod I'd mentioned in the beginning of the video, just not as good in the main story. This will cause another panel to drop down and reveal 2 more puzzles. The third puzzle will give you a caged wolf card, something we'll talk about more in a minute, and why the puzzles are necessary to the main game. Finally, the fourth and final will give the player a squirrel statue head, something we've seen the captor use in especially difficult totem combat encounters. A quick refresher, these statues add an overarching effect to all of the card types that fall under the statue's head type. If you have a snake head on your statue, all reptilian cards will be affected and vice versa. These bodies and their effects can range in impact. One body adds an evolution trait, another adds an increased value to a card's sacrifice weight, so 3 instead of 1. However, now we, the player, have the head of a statue for squirrels, our starting sacrifice token. Game breaking. Back to the Caged Wolf card that can essentially beat the Prospector in the least amount of turns. The Caged Wolf card is just that. It's a regular wolf card with a frozen possum effect. This is shown when the Prospector hits the Caged Wolf card, it turns into a regular wolf card instead of a chunk of gold barriers. It's only when we release this wolf that we understand the significance. Once the Prospector frees the wolf, the room shakes. Something has happened. Enthralled in my run, I keep going through what would be my 3rd or 4th time in the wetlands. If you beat the angler on any run after the initial first run, you will receive his iconic fishhook item, which has the same effect of stealing a card but can only be used once during a single run and takes up an item slot. Next, an area that we haven't seen yet, the snow line. This is where the trapper we mentioned earlier is located. The snow line is a frozen tundra filled with some of the toughest encounters and cards you've faced yet. Before I was killed, however, the captor did offer me a refill of items, but something stood out, an exceptionally new, slimy item. A green slime creature with a face being held in a bottle was now being offered to us, the player, instead of your run-of-the-mill combat encounter items. The captor is very adamant about the player not taking this creature, stating he's useless. This strapping young lad is Goobert. I take him and promptly meet my demise as I made some serious mistakes. Every time the player is killed, we get to make a signature card like at the end of the first run, using stats from cards present in our deck. These custom cards will appear as options to be added to your deck in future runs and even used against the player. Starting a new run again, the captor said he had such high hopes for his last contestant, but nonetheless, here we are. The captor noted that the slime jar we picked up on the last run would be placed on a nearby shelf. I wanted to investigate this creature further, and we got up from the table to see what was up. Getting up from the table, we noticed that the cabin has changed a little. At the beginning of the game, near the 4 puzzle boxes, there was a cage with a statue inside, a wolf statue. The statue is now broken, and the statue is all ours for the taking. Grabbing the statue and navigating the room, we find a pedestal where the base of the statue we just got seems to fit like a puzzle piece. Placing the base causes the statue on the other end of the pedestal, a mouse statue, to release a silver knife. Grabbing the knife, we go back to the table. This item is given no description, but I sit on it for a moment before actually using it. Making our way through the standard run, a moment arises against the angler where this knife that I originally thought would wipe the captor's side of the field could find a good use. Side note, the trapper has a knife that can turn a captor's fielded card into a pelt. This is not that knife. Oh, how mistaken I was, thinking it served such a benevolent purpose. The knife does not in fact wipe the captor's side of the field. Grabbing the knife, my character holds it to their face, to their eye more specifically. Then before I can even reason what's going on, he begins to gouge. After our eye has been removed from its original home of, well, in our head, the eye is placed on the scale as 4 points of direct damage. Not what I expected, but the result was pretty effective, as I ended up winning against the angler. After the captor dropped the boss character of the angler, he proceeds to pull out an extra box in addition to his standard rare boss cards rewards we've been receiving, saying something along the lines that it wouldn't pay to have a competitor that's half blind before opening the ominous container. The box opens, revealing several eyes that can be chosen from. One has a dividing pupil, the other completely white. Despite several options, one does stand out amongst all the rest. A particularly interesting glowing eye inscribed with blue runes calls to me, so I pick it as my new replacement and go forward from there. This eye isn't just any ordinary old eye. This eye, the eye specifically with the runes, casts a magical circle within our field of view, revealing more subtle messages. In a bright neon pink and blue message, we find a life-saving tip on the outside of the eye box, indicating us to get up and check the clock. There, we see with our new eyes, arrows painted on the clock with the same paint as the eye box. Arrows that would line up with the hands of the clock perfectly. Solving this puzzle opens the lower twin doors where a cuckoo bird would typically be held. Instead of a bird, it's a card. The card we just found is the talking stunted wolf card. He's the one mentioned earlier by the stink bug that has a plan to turn everyone back to normal and escape the cabin. To our knowledge, these talking cards are other people who have been trapped by the captor. Fun fact, the wolf in the cage strongly resembles that of the stunted wolf, which isn't a coincidence. Before the stunted wolf can tell us more about this plan he has in store, there's something else also being held in the clock, a roll of film for a camera. The stunted wolf tells us to grab the film because we'll need it for his later plan. The captor quickly becomes concerned at the length of time we're spending at this clock and asks what we're doing. Grabbing the film, we move away quickly. Before sitting down, we make our way to the slime shelf, a thing I totally didn't space on, where the bottle of green ooze with a face is now waiting for us to come talk to him. He says that he's seen something coming and going from the painting. Upon further investigation of the mentioned painting, it's revealed that it almost appears to be a framed photo. A photo of what, you may ask? Well, the almost photo-like painting is that of a combat encounter board. On this board in the painting is a squirrel and a coyote in two very specific spots. Interesting. Feeling as though I may have learned enough for now, I take my seat. This is when the three talking cards rejoice in their reunion. The stunted wolf isn't exceptionally strong, but does have a stoic leader type quality to him. We continue the run, a new eye up and feeling confident. I still have the angler hook, so I think this run may be the one. At some point, I arranged the field in a combat encounter to match that of the painting and hear a familiar rumble. Getting up from the table once again, I noticed the painting Goobert pointed out is now open, and in the wall cavity is a potted plant. Taking this back to the captor will prompt a response mostly along the lines of the player not being grateful for the provided cards. This plant lets us re-roll the cards we can choose from during certain deck building encounters. I sit back down. At some point, the talking cards begin to take on slightly off appearances. The stink bug is wearing makeup, namely lipstick, and loses the insect-based features. The stoat is now a robot for some reason, and the stunted wolf has become more scruffy and grizzled. Interesting to say the least. We make it back to the snow line, having just beat the angler again and progress to the third boss, the trapper. The trapper is no joke. If you don't understand what you're supposed to be doing, you'll fall victim to this boss's gimmick for sure. In Phase 1, the trapper has filled the majority of his side with a unique card type, the Strange Frog. The Strange Frog, when defeated, will transform into a bear trap. When a creature card attacks these bear traps, they will be removed from the field and redistributed to the player's hand as wolf pelts. Once defeating the trapper in Phase 1, he moves on to Phase 2, clearing the board of the strange frogs and filling his side with some of the strongest cards you'll see in the game. Fret not, as the pelts you've been collecting through sacrificing creatures can be used to buy the cards on the other side of the field. These wolf pelts have a 1-to-1 exchange, so having a lot of the pelts in your hands is beneficial in this boss fight. Side note, there are 3 types of pelts that can typically be traded when not in this boss encounter. There are rabbit, wolf, and golden pelts, the listed pelts following the order of value. During the mycologist encounter is the only time when creatures can be merged. Additionally, the mycologist can combine the values of 2 stats and any sigils attached to those cards into a single sum card. This encounter is represented by a giant mushroom on the overworld map. This merged creature takes on a torn up and scarred appearance. Unlike the transfer ritual, there is no limit to the amount of times a single card can be merged. Back to the boss fight. Hopefully if you played your cards right, this boss against the trapper is just another distant memory. The next area is by far the most interesting in all of Act 1. When our piece is placed down, an outside perspective of the supposed cabin we're being held in lies in front of us on the board. Unlike every other area that's come before this area only has one beneficial encounter where you can fill up on items, do some final deck adjustments, and a bit more. No combat encounters are required to be passed to make it to this boss. We move on from the one and only encounter prior to the boss fight. Our character piece stops on the cabin and everything goes black. When we open our eyes, we're in a first-person perspective from our character piece. Taking steps forward, a giant stone circle falls before us in a thunderous slam. A giant-sized captor sticks his head through and takes on the role of the monster in the cave encounter we've done before. This creature is fully prepared to offer us some boons to level the playing field for our upcoming final boss fight. These boons are incredibly overpowered. One gives you a double draw, another lets you pick any card you want from your deck every draw. There's several more, each as powerful as the next. These boons are obtained by having 3 randomly drawn cards in your deck possessing stats that add up to a required goal, whether that be cost of sacrifice or amount of sigils. In the corner of the stone circle is a particularly interesting symbol. The symbol is a clock, indicating the time, 11 o'clock. Stepping up from the table and entering the newly found time into the clock causes the door to open, giving the player a ring. This ring can be used to meet one of the challenges the Boon Master is offering, giving us a free boon. We make our way forward to encounter the captor in all his might. The final stage will have our captor alternating between all 3 previously encountered bosses, including their unique boss traits like snatching a card with a giant hook or turning your front lines into gold. The masks rotate around the captor's head in a constant spin. Unlike every other boss fight, the final boss will also have 3 candles instead of the traditional 2. I won't lie, this final boss fight will either be a breeze or you're definitely going to lose every time. This really depends on whether you've mastered a game-breaking mechanic along the way or haven't quite got there yet. For example, if you get the Mantis God or God Mantis or whatever it's called, you're gonna have a good time. Once you've finally taken 2 candles out, the captor still isn't satisfied with our show of strength. The captor then proceeds to take a picture of the literal moon that's been overcast throughout our entire stint in Area 4 and uses it as an 8-space sized card. What's interesting about this is that though we had a sneaking suspicion that the camera turned things into cards, as our custom cards did appear in runs following, and even this boss fight, the use of the camera on the moon confirms these suspicions. The moon has a whopping 40 health and damages every card on the field for 1 health every round. Overall, this card is a desperate plea from our captor and is nothing compared to the game-breaking boss gimmicks we faced before. Once defeating the moon, it all goes black once again. Did we win? A digital animation of a sun goes over us and we're presented with a series of clips. Strange. Playing the series of clips in order reveals a man going by the moniker of Lucky Carter, aka Luke Carter, who's excited to receive packs of an indie card game going by the name of Catch Monsters.
Hey there, card gamers! I'm the Lucky Carter, and this is another pack opening video. Today, I am opening Catch Monsters packs and digging for that epic, shiny Transcend Dog! And here I'll add some crazy VFX with lightning bolts or something. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I am about to open my first pack. Feeling good about this one. Feeling real good. Ooh, what do we got here? Okay, and our first rare is a Birchkin. Not exactly a viable competitive card, but hey, it's a pretty one. All right, next pack. Feeling even better about this one. I gotta say, these cards are feeling extra silky today. I mean, they're so smooth. Not sure what they're doing down there at the card factory, but these are feeling good in my hands. Okay, let's see what we got here. Some jank cards, maybe a few additions to my draft cube, we'll see. And our rare for this pack is Bam Dog. Not exactly riveting so far, but we have many packs to go. Next pack, here we come. Just cut out this part.
Luke's first pull is a Birchkin. We cut to another clip. Luke has found himself with 4 packs of another card game called Inscription.
Hey there, card gamers! I'm the Lucky Carter, and this is a vintage pack opening video. Today I'm opening a few super rare old packs I snagged at a garage sale. I've got 4 packs of Inscription. You would not believe the deal I got on these. Now, not all of you will even remember this game. I'm barely old enough to have seen these going around in my childhood. For whatever reason, they only did 1 set of these cards and then stopped printing them. There's not a huge market for them anymore, but at the rate I got them for, there's not really much to lose. That being said, a foil Mantis God goes for a couple $100, so fingers crossed. Really cool art on these. Definitely stands the test of time. And our rare for this pack is Blue Mage. Cool looking card, but not going to be worth very much. All right, let's see what we got going on in the second pack. This pack has been opened. And resealed? Hope no one snuck the rare out of it. That would suck. Come on, people, honestly. Who opens and reseals a pack? Yeah. There's a set of coordinates on this card. Looks like they were drawn on with a pen. 49 degrees north, 123 degrees west. I think I'd have to check, but I think that's pretty nearby.
Luke films himself opening the packs, going over iconic cards, others of which we haven't seen before. Eventually, the lucky Carter opens a resealed pack with a set of coordinates written on a card. Realizing the location isn't too far away, he goes there. The next clip shows the same Luke in the previous video clips out in the woods digging up and finding an orange floppy disk.
Alright, that's why you always bring an extra battery, boys and girls. Every time. You gotta come prepared. Okay. All right, this is it. And now we dig. I give a 75% chance it's a rock. But only one way to find out. What the fuck is that? Oh my god, you guys, I can't believe it. There's actually something here. What? What the fuck? Guys, are you seeing this? I'm a little confused.
This disc has one and only one word written on it: Inscription. Returning home and inserting the floppy disk into the computer after some light internet shopping, the disk boots up a start menu for the very game we're playing right now, at least on the surface level. Luke loads up the previous owner's game.
Who even has a floppy disk drive anymore? Okay, $11. Cheaper than a foil steam ball, really. Alright, fine. Wow, great video! Okay, time to figure out what's on this thing.
This is all of the clips we can play before the game requires us to exit the media player menu. It should be noted as we go through these video portions there are several recordings which are not playable due to corruption. Exiting the browser takes us back to the cabin where the captor sits before us with a pile of meat that has a candle placed in it. The captor says he's proud of us in his own way, however, after the celebration, he begins to start the same ritual of taking our photo even though we won. Taking us back to the same side room in the cabin, he can't seem to locate the camera once again. What the captor doesn't know is we have film too, and race to grab the camera that's on the floor again. Getting there just in the nick of time, the captor is revealed to be gaunt and skeletal, green-toned and half-crazed looking, intimidating for sure. We quickly insert the film and reverse Uno this otherworldly being, leaving us completely alone in the side room of the cabin. If we look around, we can see a card of our captor has been pinned to the wall. The other thing of note is that a ball of white light is the only interactable object in the room. The prompt when hovering over the light says return to main menu. We eventually continue forward with the prompt as our options are limited. Starting a new game, however, will reveal not everything is as it seems. Unlike the first time with the play button, a Nintendo-style pixel intro for an entirely different game begins, an intro where a very familiar looking character is present. In the beginning, the world did not know cards, that is until the 4 scribes arrived. Apparently our captor has a name and is a big deal in this world, Leshy. One day a challenger arrived to replace one of the current scribes, and that's us. Cast into a new world, with new rules, we begin to get our bearings. But before we have a chance to fully grasp what's going on, we're asked to pick a starting deck. Who will we be replacing as a scribe? Having no context for what's a good starting point, I pick the Necromancer deck and make my way to the very origin of my selected deck. What's interesting is that the Necromancer deck isn't that much different from an all-out Bone Token deck. A nice change-up and, overall, a refreshing breeze to the gameplay. So we've been tasked with setting out on the land and defeating the 4 scribes of the 4 card types, for a chance to replace one of them. Simple enough. In order to reach these scribes, we have to defeat their cohorts and prove ourselves worthy of facing off in battle. Like I said earlier, we'll be starting with the Scribe of the Dead, Grimora. As you'll come to notice, the scribes closely resemble the talking character cards we had encountered earlier in the game. Grimora, Scribe of the Dead, is the counter to the talking Stinkbug card, having the card's buns and makeup. It should be noted, however, that the personalities of the talking cards don't seem to even come close to the personalities you will come in touch with in this world, as you'll come to find out. Arriving at the crypt where Grimora stays, we're told we must solve a little puzzle. The answers lay with 3 ghostly skeletons that are scattered throughout the crypt. The deck of the dead is pretty straightforward and uses the Bone Token system on a 2D battlefield this time. We progress through the ghost, unlocking new cards, even weird ones like 2 halves of a broken obol, whatever that is. We slowly get the answers from the ghost to face off against Grimora. Mainly we need to remember their names and how they died. There is something to be noted though. One of the ghosts' name is Casey, and she tells us that she's named after one of the Inscription video game developers. Casey was also the name of a legacy card that appeared in Act 1. One, might I add, we did not create. Once is a chance encounter, but appearing twice definitely indicates more. There's a room to the right where we encounter a familiar face, sort of. Inside a stone coffin is the head of the transfer altar. Apparently, this is the Bone Lord, a fitting name. He demands a tribute, to which we give him a completed obol, a puzzle we had to solve during a combat phase by placing the 2 halves together on the field. This causes the Bone Lord to open up a secret staircase. Making our way down the staircase, we are shown something unlike the rest of the game. A giant skeletal ribcage with the head being that of the Bone Lord, who makes reference to something called the old_data or old data. The Bone Lord says that he will not commence in petty small talk and only to return if the player is serious about the old data. And I assure you, I am. The Bone Lord says the old data neither takes nor gives and simply is. Namely, the old data is why Inscription is in its present state. After the Bone Lord gives us a brief on the old data, we receive some items, a card and a key. But it's all weird and not the same style as the rest of the items, or the game for that matter. We head back up the stairs and defeat the final ghost. Finally, we crack the tombstone puzzle and can engage in a truly memorable fight. Despite being in a 2D space, the bosses in this world have some special tricks up their sleeves, just like in Act 1. In Phase 2, Grimora uses her quill to turn our cards into zombie-like husk, reducing their attack stats to 0 and health to 1. Defeating Grimora causes a beam to illuminate one of the 4 statues where we, the player, started and chose our beginning deck. Grimora is calm and happy the player gave her such a good match more than anything. The optimism of the Stinkbug is still present, even if only in undertones. Making our way north after defeating Grimora, we're taken back by a familiar sight, a cabin. This cabin is the same cabin we've been held in, except digitized. We take a look around. There's a series of numbers written in front of a dog bowl. Both the prospector and the angler are here too. We talk to the angler only to be met with the remark we should head inside and talk to Leshy, our former captor. Going into the cabin with a slight bit of hesitation, after our whole ordeal, we immediately see our captor, who we've been informed is also known as Leshy, sitting at the table. Leshy's cabin is eerily programmed to scale with the one we were just held in. Talking to Leshy, he jumps to pulling out his signature camera. Leshy tells us, however, this is not exactly the same camera and is only used for making cards in this world and not capturing souls at the same time. Leshy would like for us to go gather portraits of his lessers and then come back to him to prove our worth. These characters he's asked us to go find are the same ones that Leshy in Act 1 portrayed himself as. We explore the cabin after this nerve-wracking exchange and find a familiar safe. Opening the safe reveals a pile of meat. We put it in our inventory and save it for later. Fun fact, the combination was the same as in Act 1. There's one mini puzzle we can solve for card packs where the original mechanical battle puzzle was in Act 1. After thoroughly exploring the cabin, we make our way to a room on the right where we just defeated Leshy with the camera. Inside the room on the right is the Trapper, someone who in this world sells certain cards in regional packs, most importantly is a separate person from Leshy. In Leshy's domain, the Trapper makes a unique remark about bringing him a pelt we don't have yet. Exiting the room and eventually the cabin with the camera in hand, we get to work. The prospector refuses to fight us unless we can find his pet, hence the meat and dog bowl. We place the meat in the bowl and snap a photo of the raccoon. Heading back to the prospector, we engage in combat. The beast deck, or the beast cards more widely, use the standard sacrifice gameplay that we've become accustomed to. This return to familiarity allows us to plow through the prospector, especially since he doesn't possess his old tricks. We go further to the right, making our way past the prospector. In this offshoot area, there is a pond with a dock and a fishing pole. Nearby is a bucket of bait with a fish laying haphazardly inside. We grab the fish and rig the hook, waiting for a moment until a monstrous shark jumps from the water and snags himself on the hook. I take the photo. Before heading back, there's a secret you should know about in this area. Specifically, directly to the right of the bait bucket, there's a secret path that, when entered, reveals a glitching portrait of a blonde woman. Is this Casey? Making our way back to the main cabin area, to the left of the cabin is the angler fishing. He's happy we caught on to the whole area's deal and already have a photo of a rather impressive fish. He agrees to fight us, and of course, we crush it. Passing the angler reveals a new area where a rabbit is making quick jumps in between a series of holes. Putting two and two together, I gathered that this is the pelt the Trapper in the cabin was referencing. My suspicions are confirmed when I notice on the ground nearby there's a bear trap, something in the past had been used to make pelts. Pushing the bear trap slowly but surely to the line of travel, I noticed the rabbit running along. It was only a matter of time till the rabbit became ensnared. There's a secret path in this area too. Going to the right and up, we come across the woodcarver. She refuses to tell us anything about the old data, but it isn't because it's a well-kept secret, it's for our own safety, which tells us a lot more than simply staying silent on the whole matter. Grabbing the pelt, I run back to the cabin and enter swiftly. Running past Leshy without trying to make direct eye contact, I make it into the right side of the room. The Trapper was a breeze like every other enemy in the cabin, and I totally didn't get stuck on them for some weird reason. After finishing out the rule of 3 qualifiers, we move on to our former enemy, Leshy. Leshy uses his signature camera in a buffed up beast deck. Using his camera, Leshy will take snapshots of your cards, eventually filling his side of the field with an amalgamation card type of all the snapshots. After beating Leshy, he tells us that he hates another scribe, P03, with all his being. Almost as if on command, P03 enters the cabin to add insult to injury, stating that only Leshy would lose so badly. P03 is also happy Leshy's plans won't come true to become the dominating scribe again. Leshy makes a remark about how P03's viewpoint is highly flawed, and to live as a beast would be more noble than whatever the individual scribes each have planned. A beast, even as lowly as a stoat. Confirming our suspicions that the scribes in this world were in fact the talking cards in Act 1. P03 takes his rather distasteful leave and tells us we stand no chance. Leshy tells us we have to stop him in so many words, as whatever P03 has planned can't be good for this world or any. Satisfied with another round of ass beating for Leshy, we take our strengthening deck and hit the road. In the overworld, there's a couple new areas. A mushroom island has appeared and a dock has also become available. Stopping off at the Mushroom Island, we meet with the surgeon again. The mycologist wants us to bring him duplicates of specific cards. Doing this several times over, we are rewarded with a giant hollow key like with the Bone Lord, and a few merged pairs of the requested cards. We leave satisfied with our visit to the Mushroom Island and head to the dock. At this dock, we encounter the angler who makes a reference to fishing for old data. We talk to the other NPC, Rebecca, who says that she was asked to make this boat for Leshy as a means of escape. Rebecca tells us what she speculates the motives of each scribe are, but they are only speculations. Each, however, are nefarious in their own unique way. We can also pick up the clover plant growing near the dock. The clover in this world lets us re-roll our hand at the beginning of each round by clicking the newly added green clover icon. This is all the dock has to offer besides a tentacle sticking out of the ocean that, when clicked, gives the player a unique Kraken card. Not liking how P03 talked to my boy Leshy, as only I can talk to him that way, I'd head to his area, a giant robotic factory. We get the same run-of-the-mill convo from P03. Our cards are shit and we need to prove ourselves by defeating P03's lackeys, which also somehow increase efficiency in factory work too. It's been referred that P03's factory is in charge of large-scale card production. Funny enough, Luke also references cards coming from an industrious factory. The three goons of the factory are the Inspector, the Melter, and the Dredger. The game mechanic for the technology deck is that each turn the player will receive an energy token, initially starting the round with 1. The overall energy will increase and replenish after each turn, replenishing entirely and increasing by 1. Techno cards, as sometimes referred to, can be sacrificed for beast cards and also produce bone tokens. We can build our deck to utilize all three, creating a sustainable and renewable deck that relies on all card types. At no point in Act 2 are we forced to use area-specific cards. While we're taking a side note, we'll talk about the fourth and final deck type. The final deck type we haven't talked about is called Magics. Magic cards use a system of gems. There are 3 gem types: Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. These gem types correspond with creature cards that can only be played if the corresponding gem card is fielded. Increasing the amount of fielded gems has substantial effects on the dependent creature and their stats. This system is by far the least fleshed out, but can still be rather useful in a pinch. Back to the factory, we head to the right of the main room where P03 gave us the original rundown. There we face off against the Inspector. He tells us that it's his job to look for something which is clearly referencing the old data. We defeat the robot menace and continue. Next up is the Melter, who has a little bit of a insidious and sad backstory, which we'll touch on at the very end of the video. The Melter is in charge of overseeing the smelting of cards and the item the factory is intended on finding. This, of course, is another reference to the old data. We defeat the Melter and move further down the factory into the basement. In the basement, there is another robot, the Dredger. The Dredger gives us some dialogue on how P03 is ruthless for not understanding the old data appears when it does for a reason. We begin our fight. Not even after the first round, the Dredger forfeits, stating that it's far too busy to get caught up in all this violence. Not moments later, the Dredger pulls a piece of something out of the flooded quarry, something that's just a tad off. Placing the mysterious black cube on the conveyor belt, we can watch the old data go all the way back up to P03 on top. We head all the way back to P03 for an epic face-off, man versus metal. P03 will use techno cards, and in phase 2 will mass produce your strongest fielded card, thusly fill his side on the field with that card. P03's combat encounter will also have a conveyor belt, using all the cards to shift positions each round. P03 is a huge dickhead and pretty much is the worst scribe, nothing like the lovable but pessimistic Stoat. I make sure to give him an especially painful overkill. P03 makes some kind of snarky remark that it's not over and we'll see him soon enough. With one scribe left, the Scribe of Magics, we make our way south to the final area. The final scribe is named Magnificus, formerly known to us as the Stunted Wolf. Entering the Tower of Magnificus, we see a few notes on the ground, an emerald totem, and a table with a certain eyepiece on top. One note says that if we wish to fight Magnificus, we need to defeat his 3 grad students. The room has a monocle that we can grab. Doing so will allow the player to see the familiar pink and blue neon paint we saw back in Act 1. It's with this monocle we see the sigils for the emerald totem written in the signature ink. Entering the correct sigils into the emerald totem causes it to glow and surround the area with a green slime. The green slime forms an island, and in the middle of this island is another familiar face. It's Goobert, except he wants to brawl. Goobert lets us see his insane devotion to Magnificus and his desire for a personal connection with the scribe. Goobert also reveals his current state as a slime is because of his beloved master, but he is grateful rather than regretful of being part of one of his experiments. Defeating Goobert will let us progress further up the tower. The floor on the next level reveals more notes and a ruby totem, stating ominous but helpful clues like the first sigil can be found by the pail. This leads us to look for the first sigil in the dark corner where a secret room can be found. The other two sigil clues follow this pattern as well, one with a chest and another where you have to look at your game settings. When you enter the correct sigils into the ruby totem, we unlock a fiery fight against the Pike Mage, a decapitated head on a spear who also happens to be the second grad student and experiment of Magnificus. This character also has an insidious and sad backstory relating back to the Melter, but like I said, we'll talk more on that later. We defeat the Pike Mage and move on to the third and final grad student, who is also accompanied by a totem and a trading dummy. Sapphire Totem requires us to fight the training dummy in a very particular manner and learning the correct sigils from doing so. Entering the sigils into the Sapphire Totem will unlock the showdown with the Lonely Wizard. The Lonely Wizard has been trapped in the equivalent of a deprivation chamber and is desperate for any type of sensation. The Lonely Wizard is even thanking us, the player, for freeing him from his isolation. I'm sure you, my bright audience, can deduce who put him in this vacuum. Once we defeat the third grad student, we can finally move on to the fourth and final floor where the final scribe remains stoically looking upon the land from his ivory tower. If you can't already tell, Magnificus has a magnetic quality about him, attracting students who wish to learn his ways. Magnificus simply wants to be left alone to his research and experiments. He's cruel, methodical, and calculating of every move. Magnificus shows less emotion than P03, an actual robot. We make our way to meet up with this mysterious enigma and to show down and replace our chosen scribe of Grimora. Magnificus is a doozy and will rewrite the sigils of each of your cards, rendering their effects useless. He does this the entire fight, even from Phase 1. In Phase 2, Magnificus will do this in his own cards, making it a much more unpredictable battle. We defeat Magnificus, and the fourth light comes down to the opening area, connecting the statue that represents the Scribe of Magic. After defeating Magnificus, he warns us that something is going on with P03 and to keep our guard up, as there are larger plans afoot. He glitches out of the world and we're left to ponder what all this means. Clearly, P03 isn't just a dick, he's dangerous too. To the right, there's a room with a mirror and a bathtub. One might call this a bathroom. Inside the tub, there's a tentacle and clicking on it will give us another Kraken card. We make a quick exit out the tower and head back to the starting area where we first got our starter deck. Though we are originally intended to fight the scribe whose deck we picked in the beginning, we can pick any of the scribes, but the end result will always be the same. In the first rounds of the boss battle, to end all boss battles, a certain annoying scribe pops his head into our fight, P03, placing down an ominous and familiar glitching card. Even if you don't directly attack this card, the effect is already set in motion. Upon your next attack on the opposing scribe, the world will completely break and P03 will take on a 3D appearance similar to Leshy in Act 1, spiraling and eventually moving out of the frame. Eventually we begin to gain a sense of surrounding, zooming out as we see a face familiar but somehow changed once again. P03 sits in front of us at a table fully 3D like Leshy and he wants to play his own sick game. P03 gives us a glimpse at the deeper understanding then that the old data is responsible for all of this. This is what it's all been about. Whoever has the old data has it all. Instead of Leshy's cabin this time, we find ourselves in the fully 3D rendered P03 factory down to the last structural detail. However, we can't get up and are restrained to the table. It's assumed that whoever played the game before this unleashed a Leshy in the possession of old data as the new dominant scribe. Unlike Leshy's dungeon crawler style game, P03's is more open world like Act 2, giving us choices on which of the 4 bosses we'd like to fight first. The open world, unlike Leshy's scroll/board game, is a holographic projector tablet set on a metal table. We move around the board in 4 directions by clicking on arrows. The land we occupy is called Bottopia and more closely resembles the Act 2 Inscription video game rather than Act 1 Captivity. In order to begin the Great Transcendence, we need to defeat the 4 Uberbots to capture their essence and light 4 beacons. Sound familiar? It's strongly implied that Leshy was the first of the 4 scribes to use the old data to transform himself into the state we initially found him, but this time P03 has done it and with a plan in mind. Unlike P03 who has a plan, the Great Transcendence, Leshy just wanted to play the game even if it meant for our character ultimately gets turned into a card at the end of each run. I would say I would already trust Leshy more, even though P03 will never go on to metaphorically kill me like Leshy did countless times before. With the stakes set, we make our way to Bottopia to start eliminating the Uberbots. The deck we've been dealt is a scaled up techno deck. The way we navigate is by the arrows as previously mentioned. The arrows will change to represent the next type of encounter, an arrow simply meaning that the space will be empty. If the navigation symbol is a skull, prepare for a combat encounter. If the symbol is a recycle symbol, you'll be able to trade cards in your deck for cards provided to us by P03. If the symbol is a $sign, there will be a store where encounters/items can be purchased. There are several types of encounters specific to Act 3 overall. These encounters can be trading card types or even altering the squirrel substitute of Act 3 with strong sigils. These squirrel substitute cards are also known as the empty vessel cards. Money can be earned the same way it's always been, with overkills. If you go on a real hot streak of winning combat encounters, you'll notice a little star appear above your character piece. This star, like in GTA, represents your wanted level, as your next combat with a star will likely have you face off against a bounty hunter. These bounty hunters appear on the field as strong card types with a unique ability. Defeat this bounty hunter and your star level will continue to raise all the way up to level 3. Once you die, your wanted level will reset to 0 until you go on another hot streak. Unlike the Leshy roguelike style of run, P03 will provide us with save points for our progress. Also differing from Act 2, we can't just keep facing off where we died. When we die in Act 3 or face defeat, all of our money is drained and we're carried by a drone to the last save point. Meaning, we'll have to go through the same enemies till we can clear the zone completely by making it to the save point on the other side. That's when the area will be clear of enemies from that point on. If you make it to the encounter where you died, the player can grab the money dropped during the previous death. You won't get your wanted level back, just your money. There is one more thing you should know before we continue. There are also these unique encounters represented on the map by a hazard symbol. These are Act 3 unique challenges. Essentially, we have 5 rounds to inflict 10 points of direct damage filling a cylinder. That will explode, killing us if we fail. With all that said, let's get moving. There's still a lot of ground to cover. We head directly right. After a few combat encounters, we reach our first save point. This save point is halfway between 2 bosses. Before we have a chance to save, the power for the game cuts out. P03 expresses his dismay for such an occurrence and asks if we would be so kind to get up and go get a new battery from a nearby workstation. He releases our table cuffs and we can finally begin to explore the newly animated factory. We go to the next room to the right where we'll need to complete 2 capture challenges for operating a bridge. This allows for us to continue further into the factory where we find a chest and the machinery where we fought the first robot operator, the inspector. Opening up the machine reveals the necessary battery. Before heading back to P03, I also open up the chest that's located behind us. Inside is a former enemy turned future friend, the Angler, who now takes on the role of our new talking companion. The Angler in card form has a unique sigil that randomly bestows another fish card into the player's hand upon the Angler's death. These fish cards can vary in strength, being so strong as to beat the game in a single round, or as weak as being cannon fodder. Back in the main room, we take stock of what's around us. 2 mechanical combat and counter puzzles, which we'll circle back to, some kind of card creator, and a locked door to the left if you're facing P03. Opening the second combat puzzle will grant us with our second talking companion card, the Lonely Wizard from Act 2. He's happy to see us and thankful we set him free once again, letting him enjoy any type of sensation. We head back to the table, as for now, the next room where the melter would be is locked behind a steel door. P03's security camera on the wall watches us do all of these things the entire time. Back at the table, we place the battery down. P03 is delighted we can continue playing, so I pick the boss to the southeast where Grimoire would have been. Remnants of the original Inscription video game peek through, similar to how the cards in Leshy's world were the 3 other scribes. It can be seen in P03's too, as this area is called the Filthy Corpse World, and is located in what would be Grimoire's area back in Act 2. Besides run-of-the-mill combat and deck builder encounters, Casey can be found in the Corpse World, ready to clear an alternate and quicker route to the area's boss. Before entering the showdown with the boss of this area, there is a room to the right where a giant locked door lays present. Fortunately for us, we have the key. This key is the same color and design as the one we were given by the Bone Lord back in Act 2. Inside is the Bone Lord in a new form. We can pledge ourselves to this creature and in return he will tell us all he knows of the old data. On one condition, we must cut our camera feed, or more so, Luke's camera feed. The screen goes entirely black as the camera cuts out. When it comes back on, we can hear Luke behind the camera going, "What the fuck?" We leave the room only speculative on what this could all mean. Moving on to try and fight the boss, we're blocked by 2 statues of cloaked beings. These statutes request that I sign a formal agreement to enter, so we need a writing tool. In a room to the left, there is a quill. We grab the quill and head back to the statues. Signing the contract, we move inside to face off against a robot by the name of the Archivist. The boss of this area doesn't resemble Gramora, curiously enough, and that makes sense considering we presumably still have her quill, meaning she may not be here anymore. Here being the game. The Archivist is by far my favorite and easiest opponent in Act 3. Laying the field with a unique card by the name of the Librarian, upon defeating a Librarian card, the Archivist will open your own computer files and ask you to pick the largest file you can find. Doing this will produce a data cube that the Archivist will place on the scale in your favor. This will also happen another way, but instead of asking for the largest, it can vary asking for the oldest instead. In Phase 2, the Archivist will ask us to pick a file near and dear to our heart. This card will then be put on the field as a creature who is now being held hostage by this bot. If you're playing on PC, the game will actually access some of your files and will create a text document next to the selected file. If killed on the field, P03 requests the player destroys the text file to no reward. We defeat the Archivist and a giant beam shoots up to the sky, illuminating the first of the 4 altars in this process we've become oh so familiar with. Going back to the save tower before the boss, a camera overlay will be activated with a message saying the SD card is full. The camera will glitch out and will be presented with another collection of videos. Playing the videos will show the protagonist Luke buying the packs of Inscription cards from a garage sale. These are the same cards that had the coordinates written on them in a resealed pack. The clip ends after Luke says he doesn't feel that bad about lowballing the lady a little on the price because someone else definitely would have done the same.
Well, hello there, card gamers. Looks like my garage sale hunting days have finally paid off. Yeah. Yeah, baby. Wait till you guys see this. You know what that is? You know what that is? Vintage packs of Inscription. 4 of them. I don't know if the woman knew what these are worth. I mean, I felt a little bad buying them off of her. But I mean, she's probably doing okay living in this part of town. I mean, it's like, it's a nice part of town, you know? And she would have thrown them away if I hadn't come by, right? Right. Okay. Big pack opening video incoming! Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo!
The next clip shows Luke at his desk where he's supposedly playing the game we're playing right now because we are Luke, ? Luke in the first clip types up a quick email to Game Funa saying he would like to know more about this Inscription video game. Confused because he hasn't been able to find an official Game Funa release of a video game for Inscription. Fearful that it may be an elaborate hoax, Luke is looking to get to the bottom of this.
I think I've just got to send it. To whom it may concern. It's a bit formal. Hello there! Exclamation point. My name is Luke Carter, and I'm a fan of your collectible card games. If you've ever taken a look at my YouTube videos, you will know how appreciative I am of the merch that you've sent me over the years. So it was a great surprise to learn that there is a digital version of Inscription. I think maybe one of my fans pranked me and buried a copy in the woods near my house. Upon further research, however, I have not been able to find any record of this game. Is this some kind of elaborate hoax? Any trace of this game? Is this some kind of elaborate hoax? The game doesn't seem like the work of a prankster. It at least appears professionally made. I am both puzzled and excited by this discovery. Any information you can provide would be much appreciated. Thank you, the Lucky Carter. Okay, good enough. Sent.
In the next clip, Luke is asking the camera, more importantly his audience, if they've ever heard of an Inscription video game. He says he's been recording himself playing it, but is hesitant of showing the audience in fear of legal ramifications. Right before the camera cuts out, Luke is cut off by a question asking what the fuck is the cut, and it cuts out.
Hey card gamers, I'm the Lucky Carter, and this, well, it's a bit of a strange video. It's actually more of a question to my audience. As I've learned over the years, nobody knows card games better than you guys do, so I'm hoping someone can help me out here. Did anyone ever play an Inscription video game? Or hear about it? I'm talking about that vintage one-set card game I opened packs for last week. I don't know what I'm allowed to say. I don't want to get in any trouble here. I think I've got the only known copy of the digital version of Inscription. I've been filming myself playing it, and it's weird, guys. I don't want to get in any hot water by showing the footage, but can someone please prove me wrong? Please tell me someone has a copy of this game. I have been looking online for days and I cannot find a word about it. I reached out to the publishers hoping maybe they would get back to me, but as a fallback, I got you beautiful viewers. Can hopefully dig up something. That's it. That's the video today, guys. Thank you so much, as always. And, oh yeah, what the fuck is the car?
In the next clip, Game Funa reaches back out to Luke, stating that it would be in his best legal and personal interest to return the disc as soon as possible, as it is rightful property of the company and should never have been released to the public. Things escalate when a Game Funa employee is knocking on the door of Luke. Apparently she's come by earlier that day before, but Luke didn't answer. He's recording and opens the door. Luke begins talking and the employee says her name is. The camera then glitches.
Mr. Carter, we have received your inquiry regarding a digital version of our intellectual property Inscription. We can assure you that no such software exists in any official form. However, if you have indeed come into possession of proprietary Game Funa hardware, you are compelled to return it to us under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. The hardware will be considered stolen if it is not returned to us within a reasonable time frame. Please carefully package the hardware and paste the attached shipping label to the front of the box. You may mail the package at a local post office. We would like to avoid taking legal action in your case, so please do not delay in returning the proprietary software. Sincerely, Game Funa, Customer Happiness Department. What the fuck? I think this woman's actually from Game Funa. She came to my door yesterday and I didn't answer. This time I'm gonna record it. Hi!
Hi there.
Hey.
I'm floppy disk for a game called Inscription. I was told you came by a copy of it somehow. Sound familiar?
No.
No?
No, I don't know anything about that.
Really?
Inscription, you said?
Yes.
No, I don't think so.
Really? Because, apparently you emailed us about it. You are, Luke Carter, right?
Oh.
You know the luckycarter@gmail.com?
Yeah, you know what? That's, I am Luke Carter, but that's not my email address.
Really? Because, I just noticed because I've seen your videos.
Oh.
I'm a big fan.
Well, thanks for watching. Listen, how did you know where I live, exactly?
My boss gave me your address.
And how did you get past the side gate? It's locked.
Okay, Luke. I'm going to give you my business card. And if you remember anything at all, feel free to give me a call. Okay?
Will do. Take care. What the fuck?
This unnamed woman says she's here for the floppy disk, but Luke plays dumb to the knowledge of any floppy disk. The woman says she knows his email is correct and her boss gave her the information on where to find him. Luke says that the side gate was locked and wants to know how she got in. She simply hands Luke her business card and is on her way, telling him to call her if he knows anything. In the final watchable clip of this collection, Luke is sitting in front of his usual green screen opening packs. Before getting through even the first pack, Luke says that he can't do this, getting up from the camera and walking off view.
Hey there, card gamers! I'm the Lucky Carter, and this is another pack opening video. Today I'm opening Secrets of Legendaria, hoping for that sweet, sweet foil Valamir. Can't do this. I can do it.
This is the final clip and requires us to exit the media browser. When we come to, we're free to continue kicking more ass. The save points also let us travel between major intersections, so I fast travel back to the area between what would be Grimoire and Leshy. It's at this save tower where I discover a secret unlike any others. I've played this game like 4 times and never found the secret in any of the other runs. Out of sheer habit, I move my cursor to the far right and down as a way to make media players quickly get rid of the controls. In the corner of the section, however, is a secret arrow. Clicking on this secret path takes us to a fungus and mushroom covered area with a giant door blocking the way. The door is sealed with a giant purple lock. We fortunately got the key from the mycologist in the last act. Inserting the key and opening the door, I hold my breath, eager to see what happens next. My character piece enters the ominous room. P03 says he feels funny, and then all hell breaks loose. A fully 3D, albeit on a television screen, mycologist takes over P03 and would like to test our skills we've been working so keenly on. The mycologist in Phase 1 merges 2 creatures together and lets it loose on us. In Phase 2, the mycologist will continue to make combination creatures, but going up to a 3-time merge. The mycologist is a tough fight for sure, and I would recommend having a strong deck before attempting this madman. On his defeat, the mycologist will merge one last pair of creatures, a gem collector and a douse card. Except this card is very different. This card in front of us is a fragment of the old data, and the name instead of Mycobot is a string of numbers. The mycologist grabs the card and flees into the darkness as he has what he wants. We're left standing, catching our breath from one of the hardest bosses in the game. Grabbing our winnings of a few coins, we take our leave, now knowing the secret paths exist. Making our way north to Diet Leshy, we enter the area known as the Foul Backwater. Running through the Foul Backwater area, nothing in particular really stands out. I'm making sure to check the other sides for more hidden arrows and discover something a bit interesting, as I suspect there are secret paths that hide additional encounters, and more notably, hollow rabbits. These hollow rabbits jump over digital bear traps that, when clicked at the right time, will kill the rabbit, leaving a hollow pelt. I'm not sure what to do with these hollow pelts as there's been no trader, but feel their importance, so continue to gather them throughout the stint in Act 3. The prospector is here and he clears out a quicker and more direct route for us to the pre-boss save point. Reaching the pre-boss save point, I go ahead and save again. Entering the boss zone, I prepare myself to duke it out and talk to the robot I'll soon come to find out is named the Photographer. The Photographer takes inspiration from Leshy for sure and uses his signature photography gimmick. After each round or so, a camera will position itself over the battlefield, allowing for the player to take a picture. This picture of the battlefield can then be recalled in a fight as a reference point for how the fight was a few rounds ago. So if you don't like how the fight's progressed since that photo, then you can call on that photo to become the current battlefield. In Phase 2, the Photographer will fill the field with a creature card by the name of the Shutterbug. It's a pretty good idea to have a photo queued up for when this event goes down, as to not fall victim to an overbearing show of force. When we defeat the Photographer, his head juts back and a beam of light shoots towards the sky. Cut to the starting 4 altars, and look at that, we're halfway done with 2 of the 4 being shown on by light. We make our way to the Western Hemisphere to face off against the stand-ins for, I guess, P03 and Magnificus. Giving Act 3 the theatrics I was picking up on, I start with Magnificus, as we'll leave P03 for last. Going to the midpoint save intersection, we gather more pelts, cards, and wealth. On our way, we run across a familiar face, Rebecca. Rebecca, I guess not having made it on the escape draft with the Angler, is here repairing a broken bridge that gives us access to the other side of the map. If you haven't defeated at least one boss, you'll have to do so to pass this bridge, as Rebecca won't have repaired the bridge before this. Lucky for us, we already have 2, so we carry on our merry way. Reaching the halfway point, I save, and as planned, go south. When we enter the new area, the game board glitches out as P03 has forgot to attach a piece that we'll need to grab in the room, previously locked to us, where the melter would be located. Getting up and making our way to the room, we find inside 4 more capture challenges, the Emerald Totem, and our best lad, Goobert. Near the machine where the melter would be working is a drone carrying a rectangular object with 3 gem types inside. We need to solve 2 of the capture challenges in order to obtain this piece. Affirming to the machine we are ecstatic about the great transcendence, we are able to hop on the little platform and grab the piece we need. Attempting to knock out the 2 other capture challenges goes pretty good until the 4th one, which states that it's waiting for a network connection. Going back to Goobert, we engage in a bit of dialogue. Goobert says that he feels that his master is near. In other words, Magnificus is somewhere in the factory, maybe as some kind of transformed robot card. I look to the Emerald Totem, seeing that the totem is asking for its traditional 3 sigil combination entry, something I don't have yet. I bring this piece back to P03 and continue exploring the factory, taking on a particular interest in the clock that P03 says glitched in here from Leshy's domain. I entered the last pattern from Leshy's cabin to no luck, and for some shits and grins tried the other answer of 11 o'clock, which surprisingly opens the top door once again. Inside the door is a piece of paper with a sigil on it. My guess is this is the first of the 3 sigils that I need for the Emerald Totem. Sitting back down, I begin to go through the gym-based area. This area goes by the name of the Gaudy Gym Land. It's something about the names of the surrounding areas that tell us P03 has a major disdain not only for Leshy, but all other scribes too. The new piece we brought to P03 allows for us to give the crystal properties of the 3 gym types to empty vessels. We also unlock new encounters along our journey, like turning cards into transformer types that alternate between their base and animal forms. We can assign gym-based stats to any of the cards in your deck through gemification encounters. We can also unlock a very interesting encounter where we can sacrifice a card in our deck to make our own custom card. Noticing the art of the custom cards looks familiar to something else I recently saw, I designed the card the same as the custom card being displayed to the left of P03 in the overworld. Doing this little riddle, you'll be able to tell something has happened in said overworld. Making our way into the tower that was owned by Magnificus, we go to the right and find a shop where the paintbrush of a former leader is being offered for sale. Buying it will reveal that on the floor is written 4 o'clock. We get up from the table and enter the time into the clock. This will cause the bottom doors of the clock to open up, giving the player the Aurabot, a robot version of the Ouroboros card. Looking to the right of our current position, we notice the custom card recycling station has changed. Going over to the station reveals a sigil. We have 2 of the necessary symbols for what I presume is the Emerald Totem. So close to finding more, I begin looking like a feral badger for my treasure. It takes me a lot longer than expected, thinking it'd be somewhere obvious like near Goober or possibly in a hidden crevice, but in reality the truth is a little trickier. In the area where the first robot was located, the Inspector, also known as the first room to the right of where we play the game with P03, is the location for the 3rd and final sigil. I may or may not have mentioned it, but the camera from our fight with the photographer can be found in this first room. The camera looks like a robot head and can be rotated by the player. What's more is that head can also do flash photography in this state. While experimenting with the camera and testing different flash times, we see the black wall behind the camera isn't just an empty void, but a pile of junk that spilled over from the rest of the worlds into this one. On a gravestone that's presumably from the realm of Grimora is our 3rd and final sigil, Bingo. We make our way into the second room where we saw the Emerald Totem and enter the corresponding sigils in the order of natural travel, Success. The Emerald Totem begins to glow similar to how it did before. Like last time, the world becomes entrenched in a green slime. This is a first-person perspective of Goobert's island. Talking to Goobert, he tells us that he hopes we like his painting, as he's thinking of showing it to his master. Taking a good hard look at this painting, possibly 2, will have Goobert delighted you've shown interest in his painting. What is this painting, you may ask? Well, it's a delightful portrait of Goobert and Magnificus embracing in a lovely hug. It's a very nice painting in my opinion. We can leave the slime island by walking out of bounds and return to P03's factory. Happy we put in the work to find little Goobert's painting, I head back to the table more fulfilled from the interaction. It's at this point I notice the room to the left has been opened. Inside this room is completely dark, except for an orange holographic mask. The mask is that of the Trapper, and he will offer us his standard trade of goodies for pelts. This time, instead of rare creature cards, the Trapper is offering us tarot cards. The tarot cards can be selected by collecting the hollow pelts and making the exchange. These tarot cards, depending on which you selected, will bestow us with lore. That's right, you find a hollow pelt, you get straight up lore delivered by the Trapper of all people. To save time and give more story as you've been starving for plot, we'll just go over every tarot card in order. 0. The Fool. Known to some as Big Ear, he did not outlive his plot. One disc among many. The old Data traveled across the sea, discovered, poor Barry was put to the gun. 3. The Empress. With the power of a triangle, Casey helped to create Inscription. We know there were others, but only her name was inscribed. One of Grimora's ghouls hold her name. Of the old Data, she discovered much. 13. Death. We have gleaned the purpose of the Carnoffel Code, and it is terrible. The code is in the cards, and then oblivion. 15. The Devil. A curse. Data so malignant it can never be erased. His evil corrupts the disc, corrupts all of us. He inspires the scribes' enmity, He created the code. 16. The Tower. We do not fully understand the nature of Inscription's creation. We know of a building and of a triangle of isosceles proportions, and of a blue man who visited during the creation. That's the end of the tarot cards. We'll eventually go over what all this means at the end, but take into consideration the implications of each tarot card. Sitting down and ready to face the gaudy Gemworld boss, knowing brighter pastures are out there somewhere, as the other scribes may have a chance to defeat P03, the Pike Mage is able to create a shortcut for us in this area, giving us a streamline to the boss. The boss of this area is named the Unfinished Boss. This Unfinished Boss is probably my least favorite in all of Inscription. Not because of its personality, let's be honest, all the Uber bots are just plays on P03's narcissism. It's rather the gameplay and gimmick of the Unfinished Boss that quite frankly drive me up a wall. I like a challenge. I like a fight that's difficult and hard to overcome. What I'm not a huge fan of is what's about to go down. When you first activate the Unfinished Boss, you will get the standard boss initiation with P03. However, as the name implies, this boss is unfinished. Entering the combat encounter, something new to the player will happen. We, the player, will be asked to design the appearance of the Unfinished Boss. In addition to this quick little appearance change, we'll be asked to pick a condition for the battle going forward. Now at this point, the player will be given the chance to scroll through the conditions in which a certain effect will occur because of an occurrence. In short, you will pick a rule that either you or the whole field will experience. The situations you can expect are every time a card dies, the entire field takes 1 damage, or every time a card dies, a random card, mostly yours, will take 5 damage. Or every time a card is played on the field, another card is played that creates a chain reaction of just filling the field, leaving you turning a valuable attack phase into just killing senseless creatures that weren't there seconds before. This chain reaction of every time a card dies, a random card is played, paired with phase 2, will show why this encounter is so frustrating. In phase 2, the Unfinished Boss will have the player pick 2 more conditions totaling 3 overall. These conditions can cause an endless loop where the player inevitably has to watch a few rounds of cards repeating in a cycle of conditions. This can be done by selecting a condition where every time a card dies, a random card is played. Every time a card is played, a random card will take 5 damage. Most of the random cards or even non-random cards don't have 5 health, so this results in a random death, which causes a random card to be played, which results in a random death. You see the problem with this? Now credit is due where it's owed, and the Unfinished Boss will remove a rule if it causes a chain, but let it be known, he stops the chain in his favor, where oftentimes your side of the field is empty and he has a particularly full field. This isn't to mention the third condition, which ultimately comes before the end of the boss fight, and as I've already shown, can wreak all kinds of havoc on the fundamentals with just 2. Through sheer brute strength and luck, we're able to overcome the most mentally taxing boss in the game. We return to the pre-boss save tower, barely mentally intact. I think it's around here that we get our next collection of videos, but full discretion, it may be somewhere else in the game that these videos are shown. This video is already the longest I've ever made, and this is the only detail that I can't exactly remember, but the location of the video clips isn't that important this close to the end game. In the final collection of videos, we see in the first clip our protagonist Luke. He's driving home in his car saying how excited he is to have received the Inscription packs he opened earlier in the video by buying them from a garage sale. A little remorseful, he lowballed the woman selling them, but figures he's glad he got them because someone else would have surely done the same. Luke's now headed home to make the video clip we saw earlier. Our next clip in this collection shows Luke on the phone calling up the woman he had bought the packs of cards from, trying to get some more info on where she acquired such rarities.
Hello? Hi, hello, is this Mrs. Hobbs? Hi, my name is Luke. Well, it's very nice to speak with you as well, Mrs. Hobbs. Listen, I was at your garage sale the other day and No, everything's fine, thank you. I was just wondering if you remember those playing cards that you sold me? Those... Yes, those ones. Inscription, yes. They were your daughter's? Would it be possible for me to speak with her? She passed, isn't she? Oh, Oh, no, I'm so sorry. Oh, it was a while ago. That's still terrible. Oh, it's nothing really. I'm sorry to have bothered you, ma'am. Her name was Casey. That's a lovely name. Sorry, what? She worked for Inscription? I mean, she worked for Game Funa? Ma'am, would it be possible? I see. Okay, yeah. Do you think it'd be alright if I called you back later? I'm just trying to get to the bottom of something. Okay. Okay, thank you so much. Okay. Alright, have a good dinner. Bye.
The woman tells her that her daughter used to be a successful programmer at Game Funa, the company responsible for Inscription and also the employers of the woman who came trying to get the floppy disk back from Luke. Luke asks what her daughter's name was, and the woman tells her it was Casey Hobbs, making this Casey's mother. Luke asks if there's any way he could get in contact with Casey, but Mrs. Hobbs informs us that Casey has since passed. The clip ends. Next we see Luke still at his desk, but he's no longer on the phone, but doing a bit of research on Casey Hobbs. It's revealed that Casey Hobbs died from fire-related injuries that was kept very hush-hush by Game Funa. The next few clips show Luke's camera starting to malfunction. Finally, the last watchable clip in the collection is Luke in bed by the looks of things. Illuminated by a red light, he's clearly frightened by something. Luke says to the camera that he's hearing noises and that someone is definitely in the house.
Someone is here. Fuck this. My phone's in the other room, so if I die before I can call 911, use this tape as evidence.
The remaining two clips glitch out, and we're left to return to the game with P03. Having just defeated the third boss, we head north to the area called the Resplendent Bastion, which is meant to represent the area formerly known as P03's factory. Clearly, P03 holds his former domain in high regard. This area requires us to go around and activate 4 satellite dishes, then we can face off against the boss of this area. In this area is the Dredger, who says that for finding the old data in Act 2, he's been turned into a talking NPC as some kind of reward. Standing in the middle of the 4 satellites causes a beam to come down and elevate the player to a secondary platform. This further showcases that P03 views his own area as heavenly. Inside the boss room, now we encounter the Uberbot Golly. Starting the fight, Golly's special skills become apparent. She can connect to the internet, placing a mole card down to start, except this mole is different from the character art we've normally encountered. This time the mole is represented on the board as an actual picture of a mole that you'd find on Google Images. Golly will continue to access the web, pulling from our Steam friends list and placing down cards as represented by our friends' profile pictures and names. At the end of the third round, Golly will bring in a custom card made by another Inscription player. If you beat Golly in Phase 1 with this card, you actually helped another real player, as you'll soon find out why. In Phase 2, Golly will ask you to design a card. This card will be then sent out to another player. If this player wins Phase 1 with your card, then you will automatically win Phase 2. Beating Golly will cause the last beam to shoot up and connect with the altars, completing the set of 4. The game, however, is stopped at this point as P03 says that one of his cameras has gone down and wants us to go check on it. Getting up from the table, I have an idea of where P03 wants us to go and return to the 4th captcha challenge that required internet access earlier in the second room. Completing the challenge and declaring we are in fact not a robot, the elevator leading to the 3rd lower room of the factory, where the Dredger was originally, begins to descend. All is dark until we see 3 sets of eyes begin to take shape. This is when they step forward. The scribes. In front of us is the 3 scribes that seem to have used Leshy's raft to escape the old data, changing them into something of P03's design. The 3 scribes say it's crucial to keep playing the final bit of the game like normal so the robotic scribe P03 doesn't concern himself with the cameras. They give no further detail but assure us that they will strike when the moment is right. We exit the elevator knowing at least someone is capable of stopping this so-called Great Transcendence. Returning back to the table, P03 says it's now time for the Great Transcendence to take place and to make our way back to the beginning where the 4 shrines are located. Trailing along and getting to the starting save point, we begin moving up towards the 4 altars. This is when P03 makes remarks on how great, well, the Great Transcendence will be, and more importantly, how it's just ahead. We arrive at the altars where P03 is beginning the Great Transcendence. On his face, a progress bar pops up. Quickly, the percentages begin to rise. This isn't good. Before the upload can be completed, a pair of hands come from the darkness and utterly rip the head of P03 from his body, presumably ending the robot's life, at least in this world. The 3 scribes step forward from the shadows by distracting P03. Leshy and the gang were able to make it from the dredger room to the scribe control room without being noticed. P03's head now fully removed, Leshy and Magnificus make statements on how the cycle can continue. Grimoire sets in motion her own plan. Pulling out a book, Grimoire reveals that she has found the data logs of the floppy disk and deletes everything on it. Everything. Inscription, the cards, everything including herself. It all starts to get deleted. The 4th and final act of Inscription are the most visually appealing out of all of them. The stylistic choices in the little sampler dish offered by the possibilities of different timelines is what really sucked me in, and I consider this ending a worthwhile conclusion to a terrific experience. The player gains control and starts in a room with a tombstone blocking the path forward. Placing the 3 different text stones into empty slots, similar to how we did in Act 2 during Grimoire's area, will cause the tombstone to slide down, opening a path to us. Walking down this path, as the world caves in, we come across Grimoire sitting at a table. Grimoire would like to celebrate the end of the endless cycle with a game of Inscription using her own signature bone deck. The player is given the chance just briefly to navigate what would be Grimoire's game had she obtained the old data at some point. The board we travel in this segment is a chessboard. There are 2 fights, then we must fight Grimoire's boss battle. The boss fight against Grimoire will oddly enough have her pulling out the mask of a ghost found in her domain back in Act 2, Royal Dominguez. Royal was a seafaring voyager who had died from scurvy. Before we can figure out what Grimoire's gimmick is, as Royal, everything including pieces of the board, are deleted before we can actually play the game. The game can't continue because of this. Grimoire thanks us for our duty fulfilled. Reaching her hand across the table, we shake it, knowing that we did this scribe justice. We next cut to Leshy's cabin. He's aware of what's going to happen in a few moments and asks if we'll just play one more game for old time's sake. We play the game with our deck we won back with in Act 1. You can win or lose this fight, but when it happens, the scales will be deleted. Leshy will insist we keep playing, that keeping track of the score isn't important anymore. We continue to deal blows out on one another, Leshy commemorating the player for all we've gone through. Finally, as the bell is deleted, Leshy reaches out his hand, and we shake. He himself is then deleted. We cut to Magnificus in an all-white room. The player can actually witness this room back in Act 1 if they lose enough times. This will cause the room to pop up in the player's vision, where Magnificus will give the player some tips on escape. Fun fact, the body of Magnificus can actually be found in Leshy's storage room back in Act 1. We start walking in a white room that has broken pillars leading us down a path. Along this path we see Goobert's painting, but it's been changed with a large white splotch removing Goobert. Magnificus ahead of us is sad to see the end, bargaining with the player to stop the deletion, but nonetheless would like to play a game of Inscription, just like every other scribe. 2 pillars rise from the ground, elevating Magnificus and the player over a battlefield. We're given a dual deck from Yu-Gi-Oh! And 500 health points. We begin to play with the gem cards we've become accustomed to, but they've been given a new appearance and abilities. Whittling away at another's life points as the world starts falling apart completely, cards become deleted amalgamations that have broken stats, the health bars begin to go absolutely crazy. Magnificus will begin clearly struggling to maintain his current form, glitching in pain as he tries to maintain a solid state. He begs for Luke to remove the disc to save what's left. The 2 battle columns fall and Magnificus begins crawling towards us, glitching along the way, saying he has to shake our hand. He must. Then, as quickly as Magnificus arrived, he disappears, just short before shaking our hand. The entire screen is left white. Moving with the arrow keys will cause our character from Act 2 to walk on screen in all their pixel glory. Controlling the character, we begin walking off screen in various directions to see what's left on the disc. We come across the wood carver who tells us there's not much left besides the old data. She says we shouldn't access it, but knows we won't listen. We continue our travels through the desolated floppy disk, that is, until we find what this whole thing's been about. In front of us, a square of pure static is the only thing left. We have to click it. I know I shouldn't, but I do. I click on the old data. The screen goes absolutely nuts with multiple files being released to Luke, files of previously hidden data that breaks this whole thing wide open. We hear Luke's breathing get heavy and say, "What the fuck?" Then a screen covering censor square with redacted written on it begins to cover the screen cuts out. A clip plays of Luke ejecting the floppy disk and smashing it with a hammer, each strike causing the recording camera to
Hey Luke, this is Herman from the Herald, just following up after the message you left me this morning. You have time to talk right now?
Yes, thank you so much for getting back to me.
No problem, Luke. If I understand you correctly, you've got some video footage that might expose some malpractice on the part of a game publisher, Game Funa?
Yes, that's right. Firstly, I have a game of theirs that took control of my PC for a bit, which can't be legal, and then this woman from the company came to my house, and she...
Okay, hold on a second. Let me just get my pen and pad here, okay. Okay, so you have a game of theirs that took, was it a virus or something?
I told you!
glitch. We cut to Luke talking on the phone with a reporter trying to expose Game Funa for everything that's happened. Luke is speaking when a knock on the door can be heard. Luke tells the camera that he thinks this is the same Game Funa employee who was shown earlier in the videos. Luke says that she stopped by yesterday, but he didn't have a chance to record the interaction. Luke grabs the camera and opens the door. It's the same Game Funa employee from before. Luke says he doesn't have the game and to leave him alone. The woman, who we'll learn is Amanda, pulls out a gun and executes Luke on the spot, entering his apartment while stepping over his lifeless body. The camera holds on the scene, and then credits roll. Fade to black. Whoa, you didn't think the game ended there, did you? No. We still have a lot of ground to cover. So what happened? What did all this mean? Well, in short, a man by the name of Luke, who likes reviewing trading card games, bought some rare card packs at a garage sale. For a discount, no less, as he kept mentioning. While opening the packs, Luke discovers one of them was resealed. Inside on one of the cards, Luke finds coordinates on a nearby location to where he currently lives. Traveling to the location, Luke digs up a floppy disk with the same name of the card packs written on it. Going home and booting up the floppy disk, Luke discovers an Inscription video game is on the disk. Starting the game and hitting continue, Luke is put into a card game against a captor in the cabin. Defeating the cabin captor will cause Luke to return to the start menu of the game. Beating this captor, who Luke learns shortly is named Leshy, reset Inscription video game to the base state. While all this is going on, Luke in his spare time is investigating and reaching out for more information via the internet. Reaching out to the woman who sold the cards, Luke gathers that an old software developer at Game Funa, Casey Hobbs, was the original owner of this particular floppy disk. Casey has since died under mysterious circumstances. Luke travels through base state Inscription, getting an understanding of the card types and scribes. Something called the old data holds great power, and a majority of the scribes are on the hunt for a piece of it. Luke defeats all 4 scribes, but a scribe by the name of P03 has found some fragments of old data to use in a bigger plan. While trying to replace one of the scribes as intended by the Inscription base game, P03 places some of the old data on the field. The player attacks this old data and causes the transformation of Inscription once again. This transformation gives the scribe P03 a chance to run the game like our former captor Leshy. Through dialogue, we gather Leshy had come across the old data through his subordinate, the angler who fished it out of the depths like the dredger in his own way. This is presumed to have occurred before the player picks up the game and was done by the former owner and programmer Casey Hobbs. This statement is confirmed through the events detailed in Casey's mod, which we'll go over here in a minute. With this new transformation, P03 takes on the same 3D look that Leshy had at the beginning. Luke at this time is being visited by people claiming to work for Game Funa, looking for their game with not the best intentions if they don't find it. The woman looking for the floppy disk at Luke's front door says her name is Amanda, but that's not quite right, as it seems. P03 has us play through his own game. As we progress further, we discover the other 3 scribes made it out of Act 2 without being transformed. They tell us to keep playing along and act like everything is normal. Upon reaching the climax of P03's game, his plan of uploading Inscription to the World Wide Web is revealed, releasing a little bit of P03 to everyone's home systems, essentially creating digital immortality. Before this can happen, Leshy rips the head off of P03, interrupting the process. 2 of the scribes begin to reset the cycle of setting the game to its base state. However, Grimora, another scribe, is tired and she wishes to put the whole thing to rest. She begins to pull out the file directory where the game and all the contents of the disk are held. Grimora wipes it all, deleting everything, or trying to. Saying goodbye to the scribes, we've gotten to know a little better along the way, except P03 can be assumed as dead, until there's nothing left but the old data. We have no other choice but then to engage with this cursed object. Clicking on it reveals a lot more than what we can originally gain while playing the game. Zooming in on the files before they become redacted, we can begin to unravel the story. This is where the game typically ends for most people. To understand more, we need to grind. In order to fill the missing pieces, we need to devote an ungodly amount of time to a little thing called Casey's Mod. Casey's Mod is an updated play mode added to Act 1 where the player may run through a more difficult Leshy, with certain challenge modes that you have to bulldoze through again and again to get good, as the kids say. Casey's Mod has unique features allowing for a change up in the starting deck and encounters like having Goobert duplicate a player's choice of card, with the chance the card will become more or less powerful. Casey's Mod provides a unique experience of challenge and required skill in order to actually make serious progress. The game won't help you with progress by making game-breaking items and unfair advantages available. And not to mention the secret boss that awaits those who have risen above the challenge. It's royal domain, guys. But what is Casey's Mod? Where does it all fit in with the story? Casey Hobbs, as we know, was a former programmer at Game Funa. Casey's job at Game Funa was to work on the upcoming Inscription video game. While working on a floppy disk with a copy of the game on it, fine-tuning the details for release, Casey discovers something preternatural is happening. Characters are walking and talking all on their own with no explanation. This is where Casey's Mod comes into play. By completing the different challenges Casey has programmed into the game, we can learn more than ever about what happened before Luke got the disc. I'll read to you now the 12 entries that go with Casey's Mod, then give you a breakdown from there. Entry 1. Okay, I need to write this down now, so I don't go to sleep and tell myself I dreamt it. I'm working late and testing out the latest build, and out of freaking nowhere, the angler starts freaking out. Like he pulled something out from the river with his hook and then gets up and walks? There is no walk animation for this character. WTF? He walked right into the cabin. I followed him in and couldn't find him. Leshy had some new dialogue lines that I cannot find in the dialogue file. He said something about the old data and how the angler served him well or something. I'm so tired that I'm already wondering if I made this up. Entry 2. So I woke up and damn near lost my mind. I tried to recreate that bug with the angler over and over and nothing weird was happening. Then I realized I was testing on a different disc. So I popped in the same disc as last night and holy shit. Leshy went 3D. What does that mean? I can barely even know. Maybe I am crazy. The entire game is different. Leshy took over and is 3D. I don't know anyone who would listen to me about this. Entry 3. I've been playing this new Inscription for a few days. Work has been unproductive. I emailed some of the other devs, kind of probing to see if they know anything about this without appearing crazy. No dice. The strange thing? The game is fun, like it's actually a good game. But stranger still? Leshy. He talks to the challenger, almost as if he's talking to me. It's freaky, but not altogether unwelcome. I could use a friend. Entry 4. I scoured the disc last night, looking for some kind of explanation, and I found some really weird stuff on it. It made me think, what is this old data, and why does Leshy only talk about it when he's wearing the woodcarver's mask? I found some log from Mr. Kaminsky. It was pretty clear when I met him that the guy had issues. But he seemed to be saying in this log that the entire development of Inscription was a cover? For what? How infuriating if true. Time to start another run, I guess. Entry 5. I'm addicted to Leshy's Inscription. It's far from perfect though. Some really unbalanced shit in here to be honest. I have my Ouroboros up to over 100 thanks to this stupidly broken Vicinity Sigil combo. I decided that I'm going to work on making this balanced and maybe making a bit of an actual challenge. I'm making a mod. I wonder what Leshy will think. Entry 6. Work on the mod continues. I was appalled to find that Leshy chose to use the Casey Hobbs ghoul skull as a trinket on his shelf. He fills it with teeth for the trapper after every boss. Kinda lame because it's tedious to keep getting up from the table just to collect the teeth. I'll have to hack that out. He'll hate me for it. Entry 7. Some nights I mod, some nights I dig. I dig deeper into this log file and find things I sometimes wish I hadn't. This isn't just some disc Kaminsky used to vent his workplace frustrations. This is some real shit. Every once in a while I get some context from the woodcarver and it's chilling. This could all be bunk, or there could be a doomsday machine under Berlin, armed by a code hidden on the pack of cards. In other news, I just finished implementing the boss totem challenge. Entry 8. I could barely leave the apartment, save for the odd dinner out with Mom, but last night was an exception. I went to Comics Land to play a Secrets of Legendaria draft. Is it weird that I brought the disc with me? I felt uncomfortable being apart from it. I ended up ripping a foil, Sweaty Dragon, but lost the first match to this weird dude who wanted to record it for his YouTube channel. Like he actually brought a camcorder on a shaky tripod to the shop. How is that allowed? Entry 9. Today I found out what happened to P03. Leshy turned the Scribe of Technology into a Stoke card. I found the card on the shelf below the safe and laughed right out loud when it told me it was P03 and needed help. I handed it over to Leshy, who was less amused. I guess this is the fate that the other scribes met, though I haven't seen them yet. Entry 10. Last night I brought the disc with me on a walk around the seawall, and was this close to chucking it out into the water. If I'm right, the Karnoffel code is still out there, and the machine is incredibly still ready to accept it. Destroy the disc, no one finds the code, and no one can blow up half of Europe, right? But I saw an otter, which made me think of Leshy. Maybe we need the code to disarm the machine. Could that be right? I can't be sure. I went home. Entry 11. Before beating the boss, data corrupted. After beating the boss. No one will ever play this mod, and the way things are looking, they may not even play this game. But I'm going to indulge in a fantasy. Thousands of players play it, and love it. They each find different reasons to love it, and then love its imperfections. They make music and art about it, and it makes me see my own work in a different way. But even a simple comment can have this effect. It makes me feel like all my work mattered, and then some. I am overflowing with gratitude. Well, time to finish up the Squirrel Fish Challenge. Maybe I'll hit up Comics Lands later. Entry 12. Call from Mr. Kaminsky at 9:45 p.m. What the hell is wrong with this guy? He wants all the sample discs back at the factory now. What does he know? Ha-tik mas, he kept saying? I'm done with all of this, but I can't bring myself to destroy the disc. I'm sorry, I've got a little wooden box and I'm gonna bury it with the disc inside. I'm writing the chords down. Who knows, maybe I'll burn them later. Leshy will thank me. The world may not. This is the end of the Casey Mods entries. In short, Casey was given a special copy of a floppy disk with the Inscription video game coded onto it. However, this is no ordinary disk and possesses, as we've learned, a sinister piece of code called the old data. Casey, up late one night, working on the final touches of the game, starts to notice anomalies happening with the characters of the Angler and Leshy. The Angler gives Leshy something, and Leshy goes 3D. Casey enjoys the new Inscription, even going so far as to mod the game for a more challenging experience. Discovering that this phenomena is only limited to one particular floppy disk, Casey begins delving into the code. Casey learns of everything through her deep dive, even looking at the old data, and here's what we learn. Casey discovers something called the Karnoffel code. Karnoffel is an old card game, a really old card game, in real life might I add, not just in Inscription. Karnoffel comes from Germany, which makes sense once we learn references of the Karnoffel code being recovered by Soviets in Berlin after World War II. Looking back at the culmination of tarot cards and Casey mod entries, we can learn that the Karnoffel code at some point in time was created by the devil, the actual devil, using a Karnoffel deck, arranged in a particular order. This code gives the users powers beyond comprehension or explanation, maybe? The Karnoffel deck fell into the hands of, you guessed it, Nazis, which we'll get more into in a bit. Soviets forces recovered the Karnoffel code, replicating it digitally. The code now replicated by the Soviets returned to Moscow with the new code. A Soviet spy by the name of Big Ear, I think, would go on to steal the code and send it to a data manager by the name of Kaminsky back in Berlin. Kaminsky would accidentally lose the code to one Casey Hobbs by having misplaced the floppy disk in a shipment going to Game Funa. Kaminsky can no longer be inferred as dead or alive, but most likely dead. It's discovered by Casey, a Game Funa employee who was handed the disk, that the code may activate a doomsday device Hitler created under Berlin. She contemplates throwing the floppy disk into the ocean, but ultimately does not, as it could be needed to deactivate the device. Similar to how Luke was killed for the disk, we can assume Casey Hobbs was as well when Game Funa discovers she at some point had been in possession of the code. There's still a couple of mysteries, some of which can be solved by playing the other two games, The Hex and Pony Island. More importantly, however, something remains a mystery still even to you, my audience, and that is the true ending of Inscription. That's right, there's more. Inscription has been argued to be a video game with an ARG, or an ARG with a video game, but the big takeaway at this point is that Inscription has an ARG. Known to exist by few and having been solved by even fewer, the Inscription ARG can technically be accessed back in Act 2, but starts actually in Act 1. During the boot up of Act 2, where the player can see the script of the game rapidly loading, you can press Ctrl-C, cancelling Act 2 and entering a command prompt screen. The player is then free to navigate the code of Inscription. By accessing the old data through a series of command prompts, will be given a chance to decode a text log. The hint being the following three phrases: mycologist, perhaps, and blood letterbox with a series of numbers and symbols mixed in. The first clue, mycologist, can be deduced as the string of numbers that had been on a card created by the mycologist in our last encounter back in Act 3. The second clue, perhaps, could be easier solved with knowledge of the previous two games, as the phrase, a beeper perhaps, is present in both. But in Inscription, this is a reference to a fake credit during the end of the game. A one Luis Nathas was credited with the certain creation of a beeper asset, something that doesn't exist in reality. Mullins, the creator, linked several pages for the creators of the game, but if the player goes to the link for the beeper asset, the link will give the player the next portion of the decryption key. Finally, Blood Letterbox is a reference to the last time we saw the Bone Lord in Act 3. During our encounter, if the player puts their screen resolution on 4x3 or letterbox, you can see the third decryption key needed for the text log. Entering the string of decryption keys into the command prompt will reward the player with this little lore-intensive piece of text. I'll read it verbatim, minus you'll see. Yeah, it did. Poor old Barry Wilkinson, aka Big Ear, was imprisoned literally hours after these words were written to the disc. He did eventually get back to the States, but I have not had any luck contacting him. There are actually a shit ton of Barry Wilkinsons, and it might not even be his real name. Eureka! That explains so much, actually. I could not figure out why the disc would be tossed into a crate with a bunch of blank ones. Barry's plan to smuggle it out this way seems contrived at best, but I can't imagine the pressure he was under over there. Indeed, Barry, indeed. Fuck you too, Mr. Kaminsky. They never told us that. This text is actually where we learn of Barry Wilkinson. You may know him better as the Soviet spy who sent the floppy disk to Kaminsky, a data manager, who's also referred to back in the tarot portion of the video with the nickname Big Ear being a pseudonym for Barry. The text also explains why Barry would send something of such importance in what one might call a reckless fashion. Anything having to do with the ARG past this point, I learned from a guide written by a person named The Big Kahuna, which I'll link below. After this, we have another cipher to solve. You may have noticed the random string of text found between the dialogue scripts we just unlocked. These random strings are actually the next clue. If we get all the text and combine it, we get this. The first part of the hint references a bit of coding the player must do, opening up the source file for the actual game of Inscription and then navigating to a file by the name of savefile.gwsave. The player then must edit this file with any basic text editor to include event number 167 and turn the Bone Lord puzzle active statement to true. Booting up the second chapter of the game and standing up from the table will cause Leshy to turn into a 3D Bone Lord. This Bone Lord will give us the first part of the cipher key. The next portion of the key is 23K2 floor. This is in reference to the Karnoffel code. By watching a clip of Luke, we can see on his monitor 4 sticky notes. The first and last are of pigs, and the middle two are 3 and K. Luke has inadvertently solved a portion of the code. By playing the Inscription counterparts of the original Karnoffel game in the order of Douse, Mantis God, Rat King, and Douse, we will be presented with the next cipher key portion. The Mantis God card has an attack sigil allowing for 3 strikes, and the pig represented as a 2 solves itself with the answer being the Douse card. This is where things get a little crazy. As noted by Da Big Kahuna, there is another part of this hint that hasn't been used yet, and that's floor. On another sticky note, the word mirror is written mirror, indicating we need the opposite of floor, the opposite of floor being the roof. The roof from Act 2 has the number 273 written in front of a dog bowl. The roof is divided into 2 halves. One side nearest the dog bowl is missing 4 planks and the farthest side missing only 1. This schizophrenic logic is just the beginning, because hold your horses, it gets worse. This somehow leads us to get cipher key of 27341. Absolute insanity. The archivist hint steps up the insanity to straight up void gazing. The archivist, the boss who accessed our files, has a very unique soundtrack. Translating the beeps and boops of this soundtrack using Morse code reveals that the beeps and boops spell out big ear. Nextly, a chest in P03's factory, the 3D one, not the 2D, is blinking sporadically. Translating this leads us to the phrase, no chance. Once we have all the cipher codes, we can combine them to have our key. After entering the first cipher key, the player can type save log.txt and decode another log. This will decrypt another portion unless, however, you speak Polish, you're out of luck. What's important though is we've unlocked yet another cipher key hint. The first portion of the hint is in reference to the origins of Inscription. Inscription originally started as a .io game going by the name of Sacrifices Must Be Made, by downloading the game and creating a text file by the name of cipher.cipher inside the game file. Once you beat the game, you will receive the first portion of the cipher key in a special dialogue. The phrase manatee in the hint is directing the player to a custom card set Daniel Mullins made for the tabletop Smash Up. In this card set, based on Aquarian Romans, a card by the name of Manatee Antony is featured heavily. The next key is the name Antony, but with extra number signs as a way of typing up the shorter word. The next part of the clue is Birchkin 5657M. This is also referencing another game made by Mullins by the name of Catch Monsters. Birchkin has the pacifism ability, which also is the same amount of letters as the name Birchkin itself. The next half of the clue, 56 to 57M, referencing yet another game called Beneath the Surface, a fishing game. Before even starting the game, the player must copy the cipher.cipher file from the first portion of the hint and replace it with the first cipher key that we solved, placing it with the bts.exe file of Below the Surface. Doing this will give the player a chance to catch a strange disk, the strange disk's description giving us the rest of the cipher key. Typing out the new cipher key will give us a very lore-heavy message, and this is it. This transcribed journal page reveals the very location of Herr Hitler's rotting corpse and, more importantly, the precisely ordered deck of cards in Jacket Pocket, the Karnoffel code. I cracked the encryption last night. My situation here in the USSR is delicate, but I believe the intelligence warrants an action that may blow my cover. I am now prepared to smuggle the disk of Moscow to West Berlin, then Boston. The disk is certainly concealed among many blank ones. I believe the plan will work, and if it does not, better to lose this old data than allow the Soviets an opportunity to use it. How fitting. This text tells us that not just any Nazi had the Karnoffel code, but Adolf Hitler himself. However, the code was buried with Hitler's corpse as a stack of playing cards in his breast pocket. The link mentioned in the text does work and will take us to the Kaminsky data storage website. On this website, at one point, were 3 text prompts where the player could make a complaint and also enter a promotional code along with their email. The site was quickly changed to display a message that orders were full and to wait. At some point, as this is all going down, 2 fans in real life went out to the Inscription coordinates, which led them to a forest in BC, Canada. There, the 2 fans met up with Mullins and Kevin Saxby, the man who plays Luke in Inscription, at a local bar. The 2 fans also found an actual floppy disk Mullins had placed out in the woods at the beginning of March 2021. Mullins would also go on to give the superfans another functioning floppy disk, as the one buried most likely would be destroyed beyond repair. The gifted floppy disk was said to hold a secret from the community. The secret ended up being a hint for the second cipher. After some time had passed, people who had placed orders for floppy disk on the Kaminsky website began receiving floppy disk too. These disks held the 4th cipher clue as a text file that gives us the flowing cipher key hint. People way smarter than I would go on to discover the 4th cipher key is "Thank you for playing Inscription, friend." Cycling the previous cipher keys and typing in the latest key will give the player a passage in Russian. When translated to English, the following text can be read. April 30th, 1945. Top secret organization. Me and my comrade Maxim took photographs of the corpse and buried it at the drop-off spot at Data Corrupted. This is it. The transcribed journal page reveals the very location of Herr Hitler's rotting corpse and, more importantly, the precious deck of cards in his jacket pocket, the Karnoffel code. I cracked the encryption late last night. My situation here in the USSR is delicate, but I believe this intelligence warrants an action to blow my cover. Yeah, it did. Poor old Barry Wilkinson, aka Big Ear, was imprisoned literally hours after these words were written to the desk. He did eventually get back to the States, but I did not have any luck contacting him. There are actually a shit ton of Barry Wilkinsons, and it might not even be his real name. I am now prepared to smuggle the disc out of Moscow to West Berlin, then on to Boston. The disc is carefully concealed among many blank ones. Fucking idiot. The fate of the world. If you consider the far-reaching effects and throw it into a chest with lots of identical disc, now we have to kiss these fucking Russian shoes to risk the worst fucking fate. I certainly have better things to do than read and reread this top secret disc, but no, this fucking idiot at GameFuna have to finish their game. It's a fucking cover, people! Fuck you too, Mr. Kaminsky. They never told us that. Nobody is playing this, just give me a Super Weasel Kid clone so I can reprint it out and it doesn't knock on my door at 11 o'clock in the evening by an 8-foot Russian. Yes, he is equally angry in person. Eureka! That explains so much, actually. I could not figure out why this disc would be tossed into a crate with a bunch of Blake ones. Barry's plan to smuggle it out this way seems contrived at best, but I can't imagine the pressure he was under over there. I believe this plan will work, and if it does not, better to have lost the data than allow the Soviets an opportunity to use it. We are currently awaiting further instructions in a local tavern, playing a lot of Durak accompanied with a few glasses of vodka. How fitting. Indeed, Barry, indeed. We are full and satisfied, yet we didn't say a word about the work we've done today. We feel like we're coming close to the end of such a long journey. I couldn't crack the encryption, I shouldn't even be, but what can I do to kill the fucking time? Barry the spy's final fate is up in the air. It's presumed he's been killed for treason, but the text would also indicate he may have made it back to America. If you're thinking that the death card seen in Act 1 confirms this, then that isn't entirely so. Casey could have just likely made this card as theorized with the Kaminsky death card. Back in the real world, it's gathered that people are receiving different versions of floppy disk that, when brought all together, reveal the last piece of the puzzle. E-FUQZ6HTS0. Thank you for playing Inscription, friend. The end. We know the second string of numbers is the fourth cipher key, but the first is a YouTube link. When we follow the link, we get the true ending of Inscription. That's right. That's right. Despite all of our efforts, it's turned out the Great Transcendence has been a success, and Inscription, but more importantly, the old data is out in the World Wide Web doing whatever it pleases. As of now, this is the end of the trilogy, with Mullen stating that Casey's mod was going to be the last update made to the game. It's not often I make videos about games, much less however many X hours this one is, but Inscription is different. It really is a work of art that makes me get a little tingle in my toes every time I think about it. If you made it this far in the video, then go play it. What are you waiting for? Do you need any other reason? Of all the things I've talked about in this video, there are at least 10 more secrets that I didn't. Also, if you like this game, it's a trilogy like I keep saying, so you've got 2 more great titles for after you beat this one. Depending on how you play even, this game may just give you a unique experience from the next person. As an example, there is an ARG specific to consoles only that, if played, will tell the story of how the Melter used to be a student of Magnificus, James Cobb, that actually enjoyed his torturous experiments. Magnificus wanted to get rid of him, but a character from another Mullins game, Irving, told Magnificus that if he wanted to get another student, the Pike Mage, he'd have to get rid of James. Magnificus would go on to give James to P03. P03 tried putting James through a robot particle scanner, but it malfunctioned because James was human. With the help of the mycologist, James was turned into a robot, but still caused the machine to malfunction. Out of anger, P03 ripped James's head off and placed it on the Melter, which is why the Melter's card drops a chunk of meat when beaten in battle. This also causes a split personality within the Melter. P03 then takes James's mostly robot body and attaches a gun to it. The amalgamation of machine and former man is what we the player recognize as the Plasma Jimmy card. Not to get too far into the trilogy, but it is revealed that the code was created by the Devil, who was released in another game. The Devil then goes on to impact video games and games in general to guide the world to his will. Amanda, the character who kills Luke, is one of the Devil's minions from another game, along with the referenced Blue Man, Irving. I could go on forever about this game, but I won't. I'm gonna end the video here, just because I wouldn't want to half-ass a breakdown of the other 2 last minute, so maybe I'll focus on making 2 additional videos in the future. I'm pretty sure Pony Island 2 just got announced, so that looks pretty fucking sick. If you made it this far, massive, massive, massive thank you. I appreciate everyone being so patient for the release. I worked super hard on this one every day. I would just come home and type and edit more. If you also happen to have enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. I worked my ass off on this one and would love to have your support. Also, I make merch. You can find that down below or on my website. Yeah. My name's Gideon, and peace out.